Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Monday the 13th of July and we're still reeling to some extent here at the Mike Graham Show and elsewhere and everywhere really at the news that we had from Friday. First of all, that Anne Widdecombe had been found dead in her home in the West Country, but then later to discover that she'd been murdered. Obviously, we've been talking about it over the course of the weekend. You'll have seen a couple of the videos that I put out about it. We're going to have a tribute to her today, obviously, because we weren't able to do enough of that on Friday. And I'm very happy to say that Emma Wolf is here with us. Emma, good morning to you.
Morning.
It's still pretty shocking,
really shocking
to take it all in. It's all on the front page of the paper still today. Pictures of the alleged assailant, getting into a car, apparently holding a piece of wood of some kind, driving 300 miles to Anne Widdecombe's home, supposedly then murdering her, then driving all the way back up to Rotherham. It's a very odd story, isn't it? Very
odd story unfolding. The front of the Times actually says Widdecombe killer. They do put killer in quotes, but they put Widdecombe killer, not even suspect.
Right.
The Telegraph do use the word suspect. The Times are saying killer. Drove 300 miles. Yeah, so it appears that he was arrested in Rotherham, and very conflicting stories from the neighbours. One set of neighbours said, and it was very noisy and he was taken out of the house and the dog was taken. Another neighbour said, really quiet. Oh yeah, they just took him away. But I think people across the political spectrum and across the kind of, intellectual kind of social spectrum have been really, really shocked by this.
Yes.
She was a woman that everybody knew of,
yes.
Whether it was a kind of strictly
she was a national treasure, really, wasn't she?
She's the kind of person that you can use that word about.
I think so.
And I think people are shocked. And also the fact that we all know elderly people that live alone. We all know neighbours and friends that live alone. We all know people that have worked their whole life, given their whole life vigorously to causes, and then for this to happen at the end, and also Anne Widdecombe, her mum lived into her kind of 90s or something.
Yeah.
When I lived right next to her in the Elephant and Castle, she lived with her old mum.
Yeah.
She lived with her mum. You know that Anne Widdecombe should have made old bones.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so shocking that
There's
someone else...
There's so many questions as well. And I've got our first guest is Richard Tice, who's the Deputy Leader, of course, of Reform. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Well, it's morning. It's hard to feel good. I have to be honest with you, Mike. It's been just the most traumatic few days. And just yesterday, I was down with some of my colleagues from Reform and many local villagers and members at the hotel just by Anne's house. We laid some flowers. I said a few words, and it was a very, very emotional moment. I have to be candid about that. I struggled to hold it together, frankly, because Anne was, she was an absolute colossus in public life for the UK, and she was adored by millions, as Emma was just saying. She was treasured by millions. She was sort of a part of the national treasure.
Very much.
And in a sense, she was unique in so many ways, in her conviction, her action, her oratory skills, and bless her, she was 5'1.5". She always reminded you about the half. It was very important not to forget. And I'm 6'2". Although a foot taller, I always felt when talking to Anne that I was looking up. In the strange sort of way. And she just had such a power to convince people, to engage people. She would talk to anybody from all walks of life, and what I thought, her work ethic was absolutely phenomenal, and a lesson to us all. But also her passion for life. I came across a wonderful clip on Graham Norton about 15 years ago. And
I love that.
And she said, Graham, life is not a dress rehearsal. You only hear once, so grasp any opportunity and go for it. And actually, that was Anne through and through. So but it's a very difficult time. You've just touched on the investigation, and clearly the police now have a suspect that this time around they hope they've got the right person after a bit of a false start. And as you say, all sorts of things emerging through various newspapers, footage from neighbours, ring doorbell type things, and the police have now. They are under massive pressure because with all of this emerging in different newspapers, and if the police are not careful, they will sort of, the risk is they lose control of this over the
Yeah.
coming 24, 36 hours. And I said yesterday, I think it's very important. The police have got to give us very regular updates, at least daily, if not twice daily, to answer some of the questions that are circulating online.
Well, there's already a great deal of misinformation coming out and a great deal of what you might call misdirection coming out. We've got the Assistant Chief Constable asking people not to speculate, and you've got the Crime Commissioner down there saying, well, of course people are going to speculate, but just don't do it on social media. Meanwhile, they've said that we're not looking for anybody else, which sounds a bit like the speculation is over from as far as they're concerned, which also sounds a little bit unusual for a police investigation to say we're not looking for anybody else, i.e. this is the guy that did it.
Well, and in a sense, let's hope that's the case. And but I just think we've ended up in a real pickle in this country in these scenarios where police forces, they have to make a judgment, and sometimes it's difficult, but they are so they're ending up closing in, not giving enough information. Other countries do this very differently. And I think we've got to relook at all of this. Because you get into the pickle. Can you call the suspect a killer? Is it a death? Is it a killing? Is it a murder? All of this stuff is people are tying themselves in knots on different media, and it's frankly it's become ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think the police have got to follow the recommendations from Jonathan Hall, KC, the government's anti-terrorism czar, and he says, in serious incidents of great public interest that may involve issues potentially leading towards terror, not necessarily terrorism, then the police should look to put out more information. The authorities should put out as much and more information as possible in order to reduce speculation and misinformation. And I think the Devon and Cornwall police have got to take those words very seriously today. And I think they do need to answer some questions. What is the history of this suspect? Was he known to the police? Was he known to prevent? Has he got any form of track record? Because otherwise, people ask genuine questions. Was this, did some bloke just wake up in the morning and decide he's going to drive 300 miles for a burglary of a small bungalow in a very small lane and then drive back again? Is that credible? ? Many might say no. Or is there some other motive? And if there's some other motive, given that she was involved in the world of politics, not unreasonable. Many people are going to say, is that a political motive? And I think, I think that's where we're at. I think the police have got to be very quick and very open.
That's going to be the test, isn't it, Emma? I mean, police saying that it's definitely not a political motive, but then they're keeping an open mind. Surely it can't be both things, can it?
Well, either they're giving us information, or they're not. And why release that so early on? Immediately, we were told the first suspect's ethnicity, which is sometimes not the case with our two-tier policing when it's the other way around. Yeah. And it was not political. Well, how could they be so sure if they weren't even speaking to the right person at the very beginning, at the very outset? So I think they need to be consistent and they need to be clear. I do think there is a risk, though, that we end up filling the vacuum, because with social media there's so much speculation and there's so much demand for what's happening, information all the time, that they end up filling a vacuum and just telling us stuff. It may be that they know what they're doing. Yeah. As I said to you, Devon and Cornwall police do not have a good track record. But it may be that they know what they're doing and that they're getting on with it. Yeah,
it may be. But the trouble is, Richard, that we've seen in previous situations the police either concealing things or actively pursuing a line of questioning because of the way that they've been taught at police college to do it. And making out. There's a sense, is there not, I think abroad anyway, by reasonable people. If you talk about a reasonable person would ask reasonable questions. I put out a video yesterday where I said, look, this is not speculation. This is about asking serious questions that need to be addressed. And it's nothing to do with speculation. It's everything to do with what we ought to know.
That's right. And I just reiterate the point. We have to be courageous enough in this country to say maybe other countries do this better than we do, and we can have the humility to learn lessons. And that there just constantly seems to be a rush from our authorities immediately to say it's not terror related, it's not politically motivated. That's the sort of standard default. if they don't know, just say, at the moment, we're open-minded. It could be anything, and leave it at that. People would understand that. They've got to get into a suspect's phone and electronic devices. We put out a statement, Reform, saying that we're looking at emails that would have come into Anne's email thing to see if there was anything, and obviously we'll help the police with all of those inquiries that we may or may not find, as people would expect. And, we all want our police to be the best in the world. We want our police to be the fastest and the most competent and the most brilliant. But just time and time again, we are left seriously wondering at best. And so that's why I just think, in a fast-moving world, you've talked about a sort of information vacuum. Well, the police have to learn the lessons of modern day life and respond accordingly, and that's what I've urged them to do yesterday and indeed today.
Yeah, and it's not unreasonable either for people in your party, as Anne Widdecombe was a member of it and a senior, advisor on it, to understand why this happened. Because if it did happen as a result of some form of online radicalisation or anti-reform agenda, then I think at the very least you should be alerted to that.
Exactly, and we are very anxious about lots of things. The temperature has risen, the political temperature, and the dangers to us over the last 6 to 12 months has gone to a whole nother level. And just last Friday, a man who was sectioned, who was known to the authorities, was in court for the harassment and intimidation and abuse that he gave me just before Christmas, resulting in me having to press my panic button and armed police having to rush to the scene within a matter of seconds, just outside the parliamentary gate. So, we have serious concerns about our security. It's far worse than it was. We've had a number of incidents just last week, and yet vile reporters and the ridiculously absurd editor of the Times newspaper are trying to claim that our response is politically motivated. Frankly, these people are disgusting. It seems to me that people at the Times want another Reform politician to be dead before they will wake up and realise the impact of a politically motivated smear campaign that is going on across the mainstream media, not just the Times, but also the Sunday Times and the Guardian. And that is what these people are doing. And we are very angry indeed. We've had enough of it. We're not going to tolerate it.
Well, it has to be said, Emma, there's an awful lot of sanctimonious reporting, isn't there, in the papers, whether it be the Mail, Dan Hodges, the Times, whether it be
a gleeful little nibbit in the front page of the Times this morning. Farage is losing support. I mean, where do they come up with this stuff? 6 out of 10 Reform. I think Richard is absolutely right, and as Isabel pointed out, I think yesterday on X or the day before, Nigel Farage, yes, he's angry, and they're grieving as well. Reform is only a small group of MPs at the moment, and it's frightening. It's very, very frightening when this kind of stuff happens.
Right.
And immediately, Reform MPs are told that they're weaponising it. They're politicising this.
Yes.
They should have more respect for Anne Widdecombe's family. This is the reality, though. It is a frightening time, and it could well be, and they do need more security, and it could well be that other MPs, especially Reform MPs, are at risk.
Well, there's no question about that.
There's no question, is there?
When David Cameron and Jeremy Corbyn laid flowers at Joe Cox's place of murder, they weren't accused of, monetising or weaponising the grief of the nation.
Yeah,
and similarly,
this is just extraordinary. It really is, and we're calling it out. We are sick and tired of it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Also, interestingly enough, when it comes to speculation on motive, you might remember a few weeks back there was an attack in in Edinburgh, by the way, of a guy who was stabbing a load of people. And Keir Starmer put out a tweet in which he said it's very clear that the motive of this man's actions was anti-Muslim hate, and that was before anything else had happened. So there's it's another two-tier system again, isn't it?
The double standards, and if anybody should know, it should be the Prime Minister, given his previous career as Director of Public Prosecutions. I mean, the double standards here is just colossal. and this is the world we're living in. It's a sort of a two-tier system, and we're being trampled on by the establishment at every single level. And I'll have a lot more news for you over the next 48 hours, I can assure you, Mike, with regard to a related matter.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one different question about Andy Burnham. There's a piece in one of the papers today suggesting that King Andy, King of the North, will be crowned sometime before the summer recess. A lot of MPs are saying surely he should be coming into Parliament to be questioned by MPs from the opposition benches about what he plans to be doing as Prime Minister of the country.
It's extraordinary. I mean, we are literally victims of a coup. He's not going to appear to the House of Commons until the first week of September. So he's going to, sort of mosey on round a sort of Messiah's tour, brackets, he's not the Messiah, close brackets, of the country for the next 5 weeks. Hope that he can puff up Labour's woeful poll ratings, which are sort of trending around the 19-20% mark. But yeah, where's the scrutiny? This bloke going to pick a new cabinet, new policies, new massive colossal tax rises that we're sort of identifying today via Rob Jenrick and a new website, and it's in the report, I think, in the Telegraph. I mean, tens and tens of billions of more tax rises that we can joyously look forward to later this year, so that he can soak the aspirational, hard-working, entrepreneurial, risk-taking small business people, small traders, and hard workers in order to puff up Benefit Street.
It is extraordinary. Richard, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll hear from you, I'm sure, in due course. Richard Tyson, the Deputy Leader of Reform. It's extraordinary, isn't it? I know that you want to probably say a few more things about the police inquiry into this before we move on to Mr. Burnham. But what's your take on it?
Well, no, I mean, over the weekend, I was sort of slightly disagreeing with some of your videos, thinking, well, actually, I do think maybe the police do have a lead, they know what they're doing. But you're right, actually. If they're going to say one thing, then they need to give us information. My thought was, what is the rush? Someone has been murdered. She's dead, unfortunately. God rest her soul, she's not coming back. Why do we demand constant updates? Why do we demand constant information? Why do we demand, for example, CCTV footage, which actually can be really, really damaging? If you're the 26-year-old who was maybe just a local tradesman, your life is ruined. Everyone knows you after all that kind of,
Yeah, so, and I think that's right.
So I think there's a time and a place for constant updates.
But I think there's a sense as well, as Richard was hinting at there, that there's a kind of, a view that the police haven't really caught up with modern day, politics in a way, and modern day social media. So you can't just, in a way, the crime commissioner, as a woman, I can't remember her name, saying, look, of course people are going to speculate. She sounds like she's got a bit more of a handle on reality, because of course people are going to speculate. Because she said, just please do it down the pub.
And Peter Blexley as well, I was doing a programme with him yesterday, and he said, everyone's going to speculate. He said, just don't do it on social media. He said, you're more than welcome to talk about it. Oh, you've gone green. You're more than welcome to talk about it in your kitchen, over your cornflakes, with your friends. Of course, everybody is concerned and wants to know what's going on, but just don't do it on social media. Because early on, Mike, I saw some really, really unpleasant stuff saying about the fact that she just details of pure speculation about the nature of the attack, because she was a sort of lifelong Catholic, not going to her God pure and things like that. And it's so upsetting.
There were some very nasty things.
Very. And the social media space allows that just to blossom.
But interesting, isn't it, though, that the police didn't say, please don't make horrible, nasty comments about somebody who's now no longer with us.
No.
They said, don't speculate on what might have been the cause. So actually, technically, they're not having a go at those people, which again is not, for me, is not consistent.
No, exactly.
If you but equally, unfortunately, it's a bit like, it comes back to the old football chant argument, doesn't it? Where I would really like it if football fans weren't horrible to each other, but they kind of are. You can't really stop it. And as much as I hate the idea of these horrible, ghastly lefties on Blue Sky, whatever it was, which, by the way, is the one, official place where you can let children go and have a look at social media, according to Keir Starmer. As much as I hate what they've said, I don't want people to be told how they can't say that.
No.
You know, they should face the consequences,
Of course.
like Adam Bolton and like Peter Tatchell, who have now had to make apologies.
Yeah, and those apologies, I mean, talk about... I mean, Adam
wishy-washy as
Bolton,
hell.
it was literally, I apologise because I offended
Yeah.
people. It was not an apology
Oh, no.
for the substance of what he
No.
said. And it was so shocking what he said, to treat a woman, to talk of a woman who gave her entire
Yeah.
life to public service, to politics, all of that. The derogatory nature of those
Nasty.
comments. We all know what he means by spinster
Yeah, right.
and old maid. We all know that those are deeply, deeply derogatory
Yeah.
comments. And
I quite like Kelvin Mackenzie's description of him as the Manjaro-resistant
I know.
TV
I love that.
broadcaster.
That was very funny.
Christo's going to be on in a bit to talk to us about that as well. But yeah, so yeah, there's so much to take in,
There really is.
and again with all of it, I think I'm very careful not to be exploiting her death. I want to know what happened,
Yeah.
and I think we all need to know what happened. And yes, we will find out in the fullness of time. But equally, we have to be able to trust the police as well.
Of course, and then there's the other aspect of not compromising their case later on.
Yeah.
Not injuring. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, but no one's been charged. But there is still an angle where if you've released CCTV footage, if you've released certain information into the public space too early, that can be used against the police later on.
Yeah,
to prejudice the case.
I get all of that, and it's a very delicate situation.
Of course.
I just think what I'm against are all these sort of people on social media saying, "Don't talk about it." As if
But you can, but they can, but you can't.
They can, and like a newspaper who says, "Oh, the family have asked." We've been told by a high-level source that the family have asked for nobody to do this or that or the other. Well, we don't know if that's
We
true.
don't know, exactly.
If
And
it's
it's
a
only
high-level
certain
source,
things that you can't.
as far as I understand it, one of Anne's only relatives is her nephew, who's a vicar in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
And if he wanted to say something, I'm sure he would.
Exactly.
So anyway, let's talk about Andy Burnham because King Andy will soon be our esteemed leader.
The Clown
Why
King.
doesn't he just put the old Kim Jong-un outfit on and we have to refer to him as dear leader?
I
Wouldn't
can't
that be
take
simpler?
it. So he's going to be pretty much anointed this
Yeah.
Friday, it looks like, and then
Yeah.
crowned next Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, what a coup. I think Richard had it absolutely, or
Yeah.
maybe it was you, absolutely right. What a coup.
Yeah.
And he is praying that England win on Sunday, or that we get through to the finals and that they win on Sunday, because he's convinced. His ratings, his popularity ratings were at their highest point around Makerfield. He's now forgotten where Makerfield is. He's actually been going down in the polls. Kemi Badenoch is rising in the polls.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I noticed at the weekend, actually?
So it's only going to go downhill.
Yeah, it will, because as soon as you get anywhere near the actual powerful place that you could be in, like Keir Starmer, who's now the most unpopular, and the poll ratings, he's the lowest, right? Second lowest, Nigel Farage at the moment, because he's getting into powerful positions.
Yeah.
When you're nowhere, and you could be Ed Davey and falling off waterboards and things, I mean, nobody cares.
No one cares.
As soon as Burnham starts taxing people more and becoming even more
And it will all fall
odious.
apart.
Yeah, and do you know what's the worst thing I heard this morning coming in is that the final day supposedly of Keir Starmer's premiership is World Cup Sunday, final day, right?
Yeah.
So there's some suggestion that if England gets to the final, he's going to go and then obviously claim victory. Now they're saying it's possible that if England gets to the final, he'll go with Andy Burnham and they'll both go.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
What, they'll both fly out?
They'll both go
on
to the
Sunday?
final, yes.
I can't.
And it's sort of like an official handover. How do you fancy being Prime Minister, Andy? Oh, OK, then here's the key to Downing Street.
There is no
at
one...
half-time.
Awful. There is no one in this country stupid enough to think that we've won the World Cup because of the new Prime Minister, is there?
No, I know, but he's already said it. The words, the last time we won the World Cup, there was a Labour government.
No. Oh, they'll absolutely capitalise on it. He is going to try and use this as his little bounce. I mean, if we get through.
Yeah.
And it won't last. It will not last. And anyway, this big piece in the Telegraph this morning, which Richard Tice referred to, is about Andy Burnham's big £38 billion tax raid.
Yeah.
And it's it's analysis from Reform. I was arguing with a lefty last night. Well, it's analysis from Reform. Well, OK. The reason it's analysis from Reform, and it's a very interesting piece by Robert Jenrick, who basically says Labour are coming for your money.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. And if you own or earn anything in this country, Andy Burnham is coming for you. Make no mistake.
Even after you're dead, they're coming after your estate.
They're coming after you, capital gains tax, death taxes, everything. And the reason that there is this speculation or analysis from other parties is because Andy Burnham has told us nothing.
Right.
He has not set out really properly. We don't know the shape of his cabinet.
No.
It's not like a normal incoming Prime Minister where we know the shadow cabinet, therefore we know the vague shape of the cabinet.
Right.
We have no idea. It's going to be smorgasbord of people that woman, the phone felon.
Yeah, Louise Haig.
Haig.
I wonder how many phones she's got at the moment. You know, I tried to call her the other day, but couldn't get through. And then you've got that other woman.
Miliband as Chancellor?
Miliband's
Who's
hanging
the other
about.
woman?
The
Who's
woman
the
who was
other
on Laura Kuenssberg yesterday morning, whose name I forget, who's a Labour MP.
Lucy Powell?
No, not Lucy Powell. She's one of the South London MPs. She's very left-wing, incredible, talks about universal basic income all the time. She's one of his top advisors. You know, absolutely horrific.
And this thing about the number 10 in the north, and Manchester
and we also see
Largo,
from
and
the
all
Times
this
this morning
nonsense.
that they're talking about appeasing. I mean, this is not a way to govern the country, as I said. Appeasing the left wing of the party by actually watering down the immigration rules so that you might be able to become somebody who gets leave to remain in 5 years instead of 10.
Yep.
So watering down Keir Starmer's already pretty weak immigration rules.
Shabana Mahmood has been banging on about that and telling us she's going to get tough on immigration for,
well, they'll probably get rid of her.
Years now, and she won't be in. By the way, have you noticed how calm and how much happier Rachel Reeves and Starmer are since they're both been basically booted out?
Yeah, I love the idea that she was on doing her sort of final interview yesterday, right?
God, that was
suggesting
painful.
That apparently Burnham must come in with a plan. What, like she did?
Like she had a plan.
I mean,
like she had a GCSE to. I mean,
did
really.
you see? I don't know if you had a chance to watch Kuenssberg yesterday, but it's a big interview, big set piece interview, walking around the garden of number 11 Downing Street, and I thought to myself, how ridiculous! I know that we're supposed to give our politicians a reasonable amount of. Leeway, and yes, they should have the trappings of power, I suppose. But she was banging on about how all my kids have had a few parties here. That's been really great. My son likes to play cricket in the garden.
I don't want her Rosie walking down memory lane thing.
No.
Frankly, she has. I'm trying to think of a polite word. She has effed the country.
Yeah,
She's really wrecked the country.
Yeah.
And she should be ashamed. And she and Keir Starmer should walk out with their heads hanging in shame. Yeah. Really, frankly.
Totally. Absolutely right.
Rather than having their, all my best bits of the garden parties.
Yeah, I know, it's awful. I must finish with the heat wave because I know how this affects you personally. Apparently, it's not going to be as hot this week.
I got through the night, Mike,
with
only 3 cold showers last night.
Well done.
It's definitely getting cooler.
Definitely getting cooler. Yeah. I actually, because I got back to my flat on Sunday night.
Was it a heat box?
And it was still just as hot as it had been on Friday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, for God's sake. But at least it got a bit cooler overnight.
Yeah.
But how about this, right? I don't know if you've seen the front page of The Guardian, right?
Yeah.
June heatwave killed 440 people a day at its peak.
Was that the most Guardian headline ever?
It's the most ridiculous headline I've ever seen. And it goes well
in June. This was in June. 440 people. According to them, they then go on to tell us, literally, with no balance, they then go on to tell us how climate change is destroying our entire planet.
Scientists have estimated, it says in the intro, right? Yeah. Now, call me old-fashioned, but as a journalist, an estimate is not a piece of news, right? So when you say scientists have estimated, that means, well, I estimate that about 50% of those scientists are crazy. And the other 50% are insane.
And what are the facts? Were they old people? Were they already ill? Is this one of those people dying with COVID or people dying of COVID?
It's like a comedy newspaper, this. It says more than 40% of the people affected would not have died without the 1.4 degrees centigrade of human-caused global heating to date.
How do they know that?
According to the analysis. It's not analysis.
It's literally not.
In comparison, about 4 people die each day as a result of road traffic collisions. So you're telling me that more than 10 times the number of people killed in traffic collisions in June died because of the heat.
And this is England and Wales. Every single day in June, 440 people were keeling over dead from the heat wave, and they're just casually announcing it.
I mean, I would imagine if nearly 500 people a day were dropping dead from the heat, I might have seen one of them.
Exactly.
I'm assuming that, I'm on the tube quite a lot.
No, but you carry, you have so many.
Oh, hello. Turn off central heating in heat wave, says the Red Cross. What? Why? I mean, this is just mad, isn't it? And meanwhile...
Take your jacket off in a heat wave.
This is all coming out of Imperial College, of course, which is a hotbed of Marxism and nutterism. The June heatwave peak resulted in unprecedented 3 successive days of red warnings from the UK Health Security Agency. There's literally no evidence for any of this.
Look, I know. It is a shocking piece. It's the main piece on The Guardian, and it is shocking. And there is a more serious side to it, Mike. I really resent the fact that, that Ludo comes back from school terrified that the world is going to burn up. I've had him, and he's not a wet wipe, I've had him in tears when he says, but when will the world explode? The teachers told me there's a crisis. And I said, look, the climate changes, and I have to explain about winter and summer and all of that. I think it's awful that we are bringing up a generation of people that just swallow this stuff and absolutely believe that it's kind of incontrovertible, that there's no discussion to be had around climate change.
No, there's all these people dropping dead. I mean, it is frightening to children.
It is very, very frightening.
You're going to die.
But even the maps, the weather maps, when they're burning red all across Europe, that's a kind of scary image.
I mean, I heard somebody this morning who was on talking about wildfires, right? Because apparently Natural England have said that more parts of Britain are at risk of wildfires.
Yorkshire
but they actually said, without any irony, usually these fires are as a result of human interaction, i.e. somebody's setting them, or some idiot has put a cigarette out,
chucked a cigarette, barbecue.
These are not spontaneous fires, as the climate nutters would have you believe, where suddenly the place is on fire because it's so hot. It's not. That's not what's going on.
I know, and it's the lack of balance. It's the lack of any kind of nuance in these discussions. It's the fact that The Guardian and our schools report this stuff as absolute fact. That this is the way we're going. That from now on, the planet is going to get hotter and hotter. Next summer it'll be 50 degrees. Next summer, it's not. That's not a way to discuss it.
I came out this morning, it was 17 degrees, which actually felt incredibly cool, right? But even last week, aside from actually in my own place, I quite like it.
I found the last heat wave, as we have to call them, I found the last heat wave a lot easier. Last week was more comfortable. Are we just acclimatising though?
Well, maybe so, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's the old joke,
think the humidity was lower as well, so 33 or 30. I mean, it was fully 34 degrees in central London.
A couple of weeks ago, it's great now because it feels like you're on holiday all the time. It's really, really hot and nobody speaks any English. Well, it's perfect, isn't it? I mean, that's what London's like. So we've got a big week coming up, obviously. Andy Burnham is going to be all over the place. But this story, I mean, just to finish up, is going to dominate, I would imagine, the next few days, isn't it?
Yeah, and just a final thing that I would say, Mike, how was Anne Widdecombe not in the House of Lords?
I know.
It's amazing. And I think the other thing, I think that everyone in TV, she always did her debates from her kind of book-lined office. And even as someone who knew her, I always assumed that she was kind of in her office in the House of Lords. She is such a baroness. She's so the kind of person who had a lifetime. If they always talk about cross-party experience and a wealth of knowledge, and you think, and I'm not going to name any, but I can think of about 5 absolute muppets, very young, who are in the House of Lords, who should not be there. And if Anne Widdecombe shouldn't have been in the House of Lords, who should?
Actually, you raised a good point, because we've got a poll. I'm not sure if we've got the poll, but we're going to ask you today to vote on this, please, which is how should we best remember Anne Widdecombe? And a posthumous damehood, I think, is definitely something that should be. I know you've suggested it in the past. An academic scholarship, a posthumous damehood, statue in Westminster Memorial Library. 33% of posthumous damehood. Maybe all of the above. Perhaps she should get every single one of those. There should certainly be a statue to her somewhere, because she was an incredible
there should be
woman.
A statue.
You probably know this already, but the books that were behind her, because I asked her once, were all copies of Hansard in which she had spoken. So it was all her own and that's all of that was what she had said. So imagine the numbers of words that she'd said over her career, And so an incredible woman. We've all been in various different ways upset over the weekend, and we still probably will be for a while.
Of course.
But Emma, thank you so much for coming in. And hopefully they won't shut the school down this week. Must be nearly summer holidays anyway, isn't it?
It is. This is the final week. So if they close the school, I will lose my mind.
I know. Absolutely.
Just warning.
Just a warning for you. You don't want to upset her. This is, of course, the Mike Graham Show. We're going to be speaking this morning to a whole series of really interesting people. Ian Dale's coming on the show. He's got some lovely memories of Anne Widdecombe. Jacob Rees-Mogg will be here. Harvey Proctor's coming on as well. Christo. And next up, Colin Sutton, who is actually Reform's crime commissioner. Christo's here. Oh, yeah, you are. And last time I looked over there, you weren't there.
I'm there.
Yeah, I know. Well, I haven't got to that bit yet. I mean, what are you writing my script now?
I'm just reminding you.
Yes. Christo is indeed here. He turned up hours ago. I don't know why. He's been hanging around Vauxhall again. I don't know why. Anyway, listen, we've got some news, have we, with Edward Hughes?
Hello and welcome to Monday. Edward Hughes with your news. England are marching on in the 2026 World Cup after Jude Bellingham's heroics helped secure a 2-1 extra time win over Norway in the quarterfinals. The Three Lions now face Argentina in the semi-finals on Wednesday. Tragically, tributes continue for Anne Widdecombe, who had a weekly slot on the Mike Graham Show. The former Conservative minister and Reform UK stalwart was found dead with serious injuries at her Devon home. Police believe she was attacked nearly 24 hours before discovery. After a man was arrested and released, a 28-year-old man was later arrested in Rotherham, South Yorkshire on Saturday, and remains in custody. On the political front, Andy Burnham has secured massive backing, 322 Labour MP nominations, positioning him strongly to become the next party leader and Prime Minister. A heatwave continues with hosepipe bans in force in several areas. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Welcome back. Some of you pointed out that the sign is not blue. You're absolutely right to point that out. For some reason, it's stuck on green. We're not quite sure why, and nobody knows what happened, but we're trying to fix it. Thankfully, we've got some very, very clever people working at the Mike Graham Show, so I'm sure before the end of the show we'll have figured it out. But I'm delighted to say now, our next guest is here in person in the studio. It is Christo. Very good
Hello,
to you.
morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you?
I'm all right. It's not been a great few days, I have to say.
My condolences. I know you. I knew her a little. I didn't know her particularly well. We've seen each other in passing a lot, but I know you knew her really well. So I'm so sorry for you.
Well, do you know, one of the things that's really quite upset me is I don't think I've ever known anyone who's been murdered, and I know that might sound a little bit kind of self-centered, and it's not meant to sound self-centered, but I've been talking to friends and family and stuff over the weekend, and one of the things that I think was shocking for me on Friday, because it was bad enough knowing that she wasn't alive anymore, but it wasn't until the afternoon that we knew, and the idea that somebody had actually killed her was really quite upsetting to me. I couldn't stop thinking about what it must have been like for her in those moments, you know?
And I think that's the thing that I think has been the most difficult for people. I didn't know her very well, as I said, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about the fact that her fearlessness in life and her fearlessness of her opinions and her fearlessness of just literally going against the grain, yet, you know, without trying to without wanting to sound, I don't know, crass, would she feel fear in her last moments? And that was the thing and the indignity of that, and that's what I can't get my head around.
Yeah,
and
Richard Tice mentioned, because we've obviously got quite a few clips. We've got some tributes to play throughout the show. I'd quite like to play this first one, which was Wise Words, Anne Widdecombe. And this is one of the Richard Tice clip that Richard Tice mentioned. Should we have a look? Who was next to her?
Barry Manilow.
Barry Manilow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing woman. There's so many. And when I was looking back at sort of just over her career, she was in so much television, you know, that we forget. She was on Have I Got News For You quite a lot. She was in all manner of different programming. I think she was in a Doctor Who episode at one point. And, you know, she was in all sorts of stuff. And
I've seen another clip of her as well saying that actually she didn't fear death in the slightest. She wanted to, you know, I'll see my parents, she said, I'll see my brother, I'll see hopefully see my cats that I no longer have with me. And I know she was, I think she said, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, that goes against my theology, but I hope I see them. Yeah. So at least she didn't have that fear towards the end. But I also think, something else, I said this to you before we came on air, and I really think that the gravity of this is perhaps not being appreciated by some of the other media outlets. She was the spokesperson on immigration for a major political party. Fine, she wasn't an elected MP for that party, but that is absolutely huge. And I think a lot of people have maybe focused a bit more on the frivolousness. Oh, she was on Strictly. Oh my God, she was so funny. Yeah. No, she was today. You know, she was in the last few days. She was still the spokesperson for Reform, a party that has been leading in the polls more or less for the last few months. And I don't know whether that has been appreciated, that a spokesperson, a major spokesperson for a major political party has been murdered. Yes. That's
this is
massive.
It. I mean, she was on this show every single Monday, right?
Yeah.
She was a regular guest, and, you know, I wasn't her closest friend. I wouldn't pretend to be that, but I've known her many years, and we'd seen each other many times, and I've interviewed her God knows how many times. And you know, she was always, as far as I was concerned, as a guest, she wasn't just Anne Widdecombe. She was Anne Widdecombe from Reform, and she was Anne Widdecombe, Reform spokesperson on justice and on immigration, and because of her experience in the Home Office with the Tory Party, where she was a Home Office minister. You know, we were talking. In fact, I think on Monday we talked about prisons, you know, because we don't have enough prison spaces, and so she had a view on that. We talk about immigration because she would have a view on that, and because she would also be talking in terms of reforms policy. And you're quite right. But this is the thing about, you know, the difference between speculation and questioning is that, I mean, as far as we are being led to believe at the moment by the police, this person has not acted in any politically motivated way, and yet he's got into a car with a weapon to drive specifically to a politician's house to kill that politician. That's what we're being told by the police. And before anybody says it's alleged, well, they've said they're not looking for anybody else.
Yeah, they have said that they're not looking for anyone else at the moment, but you're quite right. I don't know how, and I really wish they could tell us, because I think actually before they'd even found a suspect, they put out that they didn't think that there was any terror or political motivation before they even had a suspect arrested. And they previously arrested the other guy that they released. Well, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you possibly know that is the case? I don't know how you come to that conclusion.
I'm going to be asking this to Colin Sutton because he's a former police officer and former detective, obviously, so he'll know what the protocols are in these matters. But one of my first questions was, how is it possible, as it appears to be, that when she was first discovered, and this is nothing to do with the assailant, by the way, before anybody has any problems with this question, this is about the circumstances of her discovery, that on the Thursday when she was discovered, as far as we know, the belief was that she'd had an accident of some kind, that she hadn't been murdered. Now, I'm going to be questioning Colin Sutton on the basis of how is that possible, given that they then, 24 hours later, decided it was a murder inquiry.
It's all
sort of baffling.
Very, very baffling. There are more questions than answers. I have to say something about the hypocrisy as well. And we won't go into the people because let's not give them the airtime, but some of the messages, some of the responses from people calling her a bigot, calling her all of these things. And you know what? She would defend to her last breath the right for people to say, I thought she was wrong on X, Y, Z, or I disagreed with her on X, Y, Z. But why can't people say that if they want to pay a tribute to her, but say, but you know what, she was a great public servant, or just balance it, just have some humility, just have some kindness. Why would you just write on X, she's a bigot, or make out that it's in some way deserving? I can't get my head around how that would be someone's response who isn't completely unhinged.
Yes, because if
and
you have
vile
sort of feelings like that about somebody who's just been brutally murdered, just don't say anything.
Yeah, just don't say anything.
You know.
Or make the point you disagreed with them, but you respected them because you could do that. You know what? I can't stand Keir Starmer. I viscerally loathe Sadiq Khan. I don't want anything to happen to them. I don't want them to get hurt.
No, of course not.
I don't. That would be an awful thing.
And also, if something did happen to them, you would not be, going on social media saying, well, I'm glad he's dead.
Of course not.
Which is effectively what they were doing.
And
of course, they were doing it, as I said to Member Wolf, they were doing it on this blue sky thing, which I've never been on. I've never wished to go on it on the grounds that James O'Brien's on it. Therefore, I'd rather not go anywhere where he is. But they all left X because it was toxic. And now, of course, they are now being worse than toxic in their own little echo chamber. And worse than that, this is the one place, as I was saying earlier, that Keir Starmer says is safe for children.
Well, we now know what the issue was, wasn't it? Was that it was about people just agreeing with each other rather than it being unsafe to be on X. I just, if you, like you say, either don't say anything or make a respectful point that you might have disagreed with someone, but that you're sorry that they've died. What on earth has gone on with these people's brains?
I know.
I don't understand.
Also, many of them were upset at her take on gay marriage and the fact that she was, as a Catholic woman and a traditionalist, not very keen on it. But I've heard all sorts of people, from Dan Wootton to Ian Dale to other, very high-profile gay men, saying, look, she was a personal friend. She had no rancour. It wasn't a problem with gay people. It was just she had a certain belief system, which she's entitled to have as a religious woman. And most sensible people, whether they're gay or not, would go, well, fine, you can believe that if you want.
Do you know what? When I was younger, and I was a bit more gun-ho and a bit more activisty when it came to these things. I did used to have trouble separating people's... someone like Anne Widdecombe, actually, I used to have trouble separating someone being against gay marriage with them not being a terrible person.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
And I sort of outgrew it a bit because you realise that actually it's not the only thing about them. There are other things about them. They could be a good person in other ways. And I started to realise that as long as someone has a belief that has good intent and is sincerely held, actually you can be against gay marriage or something like that. If you're just a vile person, and then fine. But someone like Anne Widdecombe, she sincerely held that belief. And as I've got older, I think I've learned to appreciate and respect people who I might disagree with who stick to their guns more than people who just flip-flop for the sake of it.
And I think also the media is to blame to some extent because the media creates, a persona for somebody. Sometimes you do it for yourself. You and I have both been in this business a long time. People take a view of you as to whether or not they like you or don't like you, sometimes based on prejudice, sometimes not. I remember I met Tobias Elwood at a party once, and we started chatting. He said, "You're actually not a bad bloke, are you?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm actually not." Because we always used to have these arguments, and some people take things the wrong way. But with somebody like Anne Widdecombe, when you met her, she wouldn't care who you were. She was just immediately an impressive individual.
And I think it would be interesting for you, because I saw the message, the X post that Ian Dale put out about this, defending her when he'd seen a post from someone else who called her a bigger, saying actually, she'd really softened her stance on that. And she had said to him, I think, privately, if there was another vote on gay marriage now or to repeal it, I wouldn't vote in favour of repealing it because, perhaps the sky didn't fall in. And I love that, but I also love the fact, and I said this over the weekend on a show I did, I think we don't see the like of her enough now. And we've got so many politicians now. I mean, you can put her in the file with someone like Thatcher, I think, in as much as they cared about being right rather than being liked. And actually, ultimately, that does get you liked, I think, because people then have a level of respect for you.
Well, I think the other problem we see nowadays, particularly with this Labour government, is you get all these kind of people going in and out of cabinet, and when they come out of cabinet, they kind of go, "Oh, well, I couldn't say that because I was in the cabinet." And the Tories were just as bad. And you, well, what's the point of you? If you're not actually going to be true to your own belief system and your belief is this, just own up to it and stand by it.
I spoke to, I can't remember the name of the gentleman. I think it was someone Bailey, I think I spoke to over the weekend. I forget his name, but he said, actually, you know what, we're getting the politicians we deserve because people like Anne Widdecombe, people like Margaret Thatcher, or even, do you know what, I'm even going to put Jeremy Corbyn in with this one because although I think he speaks complete nonsense, I believe he believes it. At least I believe him.
But he doesn't flip-flop around every 5 minutes.
He doesn't
said the
suddenly
same thing. I mean, if he was Andy Burnham, he'd be going, that Gaza thing. You know what? Actually, I think the Hamas are completely wrong, and the Israelis are great. That's what he'd be doing.
If he was Andy Burnham, he'd be like, capitalism. You love capitalism. But we need tough love sometimes, and no politician nowadays wants to give us tough love, and we don't want to hear it as well. I don't mean us, but the electorate in general. They want, oh my God, everything's going to be brilliant, positivity, blah, blah, blah. And actually, we're in a state, and we need Anne Widdecombe's more than ever at the moment to say to us, you know what, we're spending too much money, we're spending too much on benefits, we are not working enough, we are not having enough children, housing is too expensive because we've got too many people coming in, and actually this is the problem. We've not got enough of those people saying that. And those conviction politicians are very few and far between at the moment, and so that's why we are poorer for losing someone like Anne Widdecombe. And I'll make the point again. Even if I disagree with people, I'm starting to love people a lot more I disagree with that I believe it than people who are telling me what I want to hear.
Well, exactly right. And I think we would all prefer to be able to have civilised debates with people who have a different view,
but who believe that view. Just believe what you say.
But also have the courage of your convictions to come on. I mean, we have terrible trouble getting anybody on from the left because they don't want to come on because they think for some reason that I'm either the devil incarnate or I won't give them a fair hearing or whatever, all of which isn't true because they've sort of, in their own mind, they've built up this image of me as being this kind of mad, right-wing, bigoted fascist, all of which is true, of course. No, but it's not. But the point is,
you're not a fascist. You're right-wing and bigoted, but you're not a fascist.
Yeah, no, exactly right. But you know, I mean, we've got now what we've got is a government of sort of consensus, but not consensus within the country, consensus within the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Yeah, within themselves.
Look at this. You know, they're going to give up to 1.6 million migrants indefinite leave to remain after 5 years instead of 10. As a sop to the backbenchers of the Labour Party. Nothing to do with what the public wants, everything to do with what they want.
Well, we've got one of the most dangerous governments that we've ever had at the moment, because usually, and again, even when we had the last election, I did not want Labour to win the last election, but I was relieved to a point that at least we had stable government with a majority, which is usually a good thing for the country in as much as things can get done. However, we have now an old Prime Minister that's going, a new Prime Minister that's coming in that's being crowned like some sort of North Korean type affair. They are not governing for us, they're governing for the backbenchers who have basically smelled blood because of the benefits
Which is
U-turn.
intrinsically anti-democratic, isn't
And
it?
it's mental. Because now every budget, do you remember when Keir Starmer suspended MPs for being against the two-child benefit cap?
Yes.
Right. And then put it in the budget. Treasury's put it in the budget because of those very backbenchers that then wanted it.
Yes.
So they are doing budgets. They're coming up with the budget for the country, not for the country, but for the backbench. So now we've got this great majority of MPs who are all controlling the front bench rather than it should be vice versa.
Yeah.
The front bench should be
It's the
tough
tail
enough.
wagging the dog,
It
isn't
is.
it?
And that's, I don't think we've ever had that situation
And now we've got a
before.
stray dog that's wandered in off the streets
Who-
and has now taken over.
And, you know, and 400 of them aren't talented enough to be able to be put forward for it. They had to bring in Andy Burnham. And Andy Burnham, I mean, literally, his neck is made of brass for then weaponising this unnecessary by-election from Nigel Farage. Well, you know, if anyone knows unnecessary by-elections,
I mean,
hello.
it's pretty rich, isn't it?
It is
You know,
amazing.
not only that, but this is the same party that tried to cancel all the local elections.
Yes.
And were it not for Nigel Farage actually fighting in a court of law with his own money and reforms money to get a judicial review, those elections wouldn't have happened.
I don't think we've ever had quite a situation like this. And Andy Burnham, what does Andy Burnham think? I think we've brought out, like, you know, allergy. It's the Burnham allergy.
Burnham allergy.
But
Yeah. Have we got a Burnham alert yet, by the way?
No.
Because we're working on that. I think we might need to get that done this week because he's going to be in charge, you know, soon.
What does he think about anything? I mean, he's now campaigning against the very neoliberal policies that he was in favour of when he was in Tony Blair's cabinet.
Yeah.
Let's not forget as well, the NHS is in an absolutely diabolical situation. Do you know one of the reasons why the NHS is in a diabolical situation? The Public Finance Initiative that he signed.
Yes.
He signed the worst possible finance deals for the NHS.
It's better than that. Rachel Reeves' last big idea was to go back to that, to build more schools using the Public Finance Initiative. You're like, what? Actually, while you're here, why don't we play, because we're hopeful that she gave her last interview on Sunday to Laura Kuenssberg, Rachel Reeves. Have a look at what she had to say.
And I think people would want to know what the hardest bit's been and what the best bit has been. So what's the hardest? Is there a moment where you really felt the big strain? What's the hardest thing been?
Well, I would say, don't cry on national television. That was probably my toughest moment, or perhaps even tougher, seeing the photos of me crying on national television on the front page of pretty much every newspaper the following day. But even that day was better than the 14 years in opposition when I was powerless to change anything in this country.
I don't want to pry about it unnecessarily, but you raised it. Would you tell people what was going on? Because there was a rumour you'd had a fight with the speaker and something else had happened. But
it was a tough day, and we all have tough days. You know, I talked to my friends, and people wrote to me saying, you know, that happened to me once. And the only difference is that I was on the telly. And so, you know, people have difficult days at work, and that was one for me. But yeah, that's where you should cry, not on the television. So that was my toughest day.
So she's not telling us, in other words, why she was crying. And can you believe the ridiculousness of the BBC, right? Laura Kuenssberg, interviewing the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'm sorry, I don't want to pry. What?
Yeah.
Why don't you want to pry?
And also,
she's a public employee, paid for by the public purse. She's just shown you around her garden and explained how her kids have had loads of parties there, and isn't it lovely to live there? And oh, marvellous, yeah. Well, how about you answer the bleeding question then?
And I'm sorry, stop laughing about the fact that you are Chancellor and you were crying in the House of Commons. The bond market's lost money as a result of you doing that. Other countries, investment into the UK, looking at the Chancellor in tears.
Right.
And you know,
and
the
also,
most-
forgive me for being misogynistic here, because I no doubt there will be people who would accuse me of this. She's not doing women any service by
No.
doing that, because she's making out that, oh, I'm a woman, I had a bad day, so I burst into tears. Really?
Yeah, well, actually, that was exactly the point I was going to make about about the insidiousness of the hypocrisy, about the fact that anyone who criticised her was then called a misogynist.
Yes.
And hang on, you can't have it both ways. You can't do this whole fanfare. Oh my God, I'm the first woman chancellor.
Yeah.
Great, brilliant, fair play. Great, we've got a woman chancellor. And then when you burst into tears, say sorry. You can't criticise because I'm a woman.
No, exactly.
You can't have it both ways.
No.
And I'm sorry. And the reason I think she was crying that day actually was because it finally dawned on her that they weren't going to get any of their policies through, because the backbench were going to stop them doing absolutely anything. And of course, bearing in mind that last month our debt interest was £12 billion, just our interest on debt, I'd be crying too.
Yeah.
And she's made that debt worse. She says, "Oh, that day crying was better than the 14 years previously because I couldn't have it. I couldn't bring in any change. You've changed things for the worse.
Yeah, I know.
No, you've changed.
I
Things for the
drove
worse.
past a street down in Hastings at the weekend, and literally, not a particularly expensive area, but literally for sale. One board after another. Because nobody's buying anything for a start.
Yeah.
And everybody is saying, well, we can't afford to live here anymore, so we have to try and sell. So there's this terrible, I mean, you know about the housing business better than me, but it's bloody ridiculous what's going on.
Well, a really ridiculous statistic, and Andy Burnham, there's talk he's going to make it even lower, but you know this it's coming in April of next year, this £2 million threshold where they're going to charge you an extra property tax. So you're going to have an extra council tax bill every month if your property is worth over £2 million.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, do not think that they're going to stick that at £2 million. That will end up in budgets to come going much less than that. But the government have actually lost, from today's figure, £400 million before the policy's even been implemented. They've lost 260 million in lost stamp duty transactions because people are not buying anywhere near the £2 million mark now. And they've lost 140 million. It's predicted that they're going to lose 140 million because they have to then recategorize all these houses and revalue them in order to get to work out what's worth £2 million. So they've lost 400 million before they've raised one penny from that policy. That's how stupid they are. Capital gains tax they put up, right? And again, capital gains tax is a tax by choice. So people are just choosing not to sell the asset. Receipts have gone down.
Yeah, of course.
So do they not know this, or is it just
I don't
politics?
think they do.
Well, I think it's actually the student activist politics. It looks good on paper. If it doesn't raise any more money, it's fine because we look good to the lefties and our backbenchers.
Well,
and that's so dangerous.
As indeed is giving 1.6 million migrants the right to remain in Britain, because nobody wants them here, but the left-wingers want to say, oh, but that looks like we're a kind country.
And that's a powerless cabinet, and I don't think we've ever been in that position before. My God, if we weren't depressed before we started this programme, I certainly am now.
Well,
My word.
It's been great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Always lovely to see you here, and hopefully we'll be seeing more of you soon at
Yes,
some point.
yes.
We
Well,
can't
watch this space,
can't
shall we
say
say.
too much. I don't know if he's going to get his own light or anything, but we'll see. We'll keep it as a low hint at the moment, shall we?
Yes, just watch this space.
Just watch this space, because UK Live Online is building and becoming the greatest, newest news channel in the UK.
And I'm really looking forward to In Bed with Mike and Christo. Oh no, have I revealed the name of the show? Oh my God.
I didn't think there were going to be cameras. Saturday night special, of course, because Calvin Mackenzie returns today. He'll have plenty to say at 10 o'clock. And Mark Littlewood at 12.
Yes.
I'm sure, with the World Cupper, who's been brilliant. Right now, though, let's talk to our next guest, who is Colin Sutton, of course. Colin, a former detective. Colin, good to see you, sir. Last time I think I saw you was at Reform's conference last year, which is almost nearly.
Did you speak to him the other day?
Yeah, but I haven't seen him in person though, properly. Was at the Reform conference. And since then, and we were having, funnily enough, a conversation about crime and punishment and all of that. And so now here we find ourselves talking about a really terrible, awful situation, an awful case. And I wanted to, and I know you're a Reform candidate now for a crime commissioner's job, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, in Norfolk, polling day on Thursday.
Okay, and we're allowed to talk about it because we're not regulated by Ofcom, so we can get into that in a bit. But I wanted to sort of ask your sage advice, really, on police investigations of this kind, because obviously, yes, I understand the police don't want people speculating, and I'm not attempting to do that. But I think there are some people, and I'm one of them, who believe we should have the right to ask the odd question of how things come to pass. And one of the things that I found quite puzzling is that when Anne Widdecombe was discovered on Thursday by, we think, either her gardener or her carer, depending on which report you read, the paramedics were called, they came. At that moment, she was not thought to have been murdered. And I was going to ask you whether you know, how does it work when say, for example, somebody's found dead? They call a doctor, presumably, who has to declare that somebody actually has died, right?
Not now. No, you can trust the paramedics now. It was the case many years ago. You always had to call a doctor. But if death is obvious and paramedics are there, then there isn't a need for a doctor at the scene.
Okay.
It's not very common, Mike. It does happen that you don't, the people that go into that scene and see what's gone on, sometimes it isn't possible straight away to realise that there's been a murder.
Right.
And particularly if you've got something like head injuries that with an elderly person, where the assumption, I guess, is the wrong word, but where it looks for all the world like there's been a fall and that's resulted in the injuries. That could be an example of where it's not immediately apparent. And what happens is that it then goes to a post-mortem examination. Now, it depends. There are two sorts of post-mortem. There's the ordinary one and the forensic one. And I won't get into the weeds of the difference between them. But the thing is that even if it's an ordinary post-mortem where there's no suspicion of foul play, that doctor performing that can call a halt and say, hang on a minute, I think this might be suspicious. And then you move to the other sort.
Yes.
I don't know which way it went with this, but, injuries that look like they could have come from a fall or from some kind of accident often betray themselves as being the results of an assault when a doctor and a post-mortem takes place and the shape and the features of the wounds, for example, are looked at minutely. So it is pretty uncommon. I think I came across it maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole career where that sort of thing happened, but it does happen, and it's not necessarily indicative of any kind of neglect or incompetence. It's just that the people that go into these crime scenes straight away aren't deeply medically qualified like the pathologists who are used to looking for injuries.
And I suppose they would say, well, we can't send expert pathologists into every single report of somebody being found deceased. I suppose they would say.
No, that's right. I mean, if the assumption is that it's foul play straight away from the off, then sometimes you will get the Home Office pathologist called out to the scene. That does happen because that can sometimes help in the investigation. But no, I mean, most kind of unexpected, unexplained deaths are attended by police and paramedics, and often a doctor, not always.
Okay. And then, of course, we get to the point where, and I appreciate, as I've always said, in any situation like this, the police have got a very difficult job, and I wouldn't pretend that that's not the case. However, we also know that there's been cases recently in different police forces, police services, whichever you wish to call them, where they've kind of acted in a way which has later been very criticised, even by their own organisation. Obviously, I'm thinking of the Henry Novak case and others, where information, Southport as well, where information was given out which was incorrect, or certainly some information was concealed. And so you can I think, forgive the public and people like myself for sometimes asking questions about whether or not we're going to find out that this wasn't handled terribly well from the beginning, because they seemed very quick to say that they were looking for a white man, and then they very quickly arrested a white man. But then they released him fairly quickly afterwards, as they said he had no longer any part in the investigation. So, I mean, obviously it's a very high profile case. Everybody's very much, paying attention to every single aspect of it. But were you surprised when they came out immediately and said, we don't think it's politically motivated?
Yeah, I was a little. It's... if you've got a good suspect, if the first man that was arrested was thought to be the perpetrator, and things were known about him, then I guess you could come to that conclusion. I think what we've got here, what's happening is, and it's being seen virtually every time something big happens, is that there's a mismatch between how the police are capable of dealing with social media in the social media age and the unregulated news, if you like,
Yeah, right.
compared to a situation, say, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even, where it was pretty easy for police to control the narrative around big things like this. And what's happened in those last 20 years is a number of things, not only the explosion in social media and social news, but there's also the fact that we had the Filkin report, we had all the problems about Operation Elvedon and journalists being paid or paying people rather, and as a result of that, there were new guidelines about police contact and engagement with journalists. And I said at the time when that happened that it would breed a generation of journalists whose default position was to criticise, because we lost that engagement. That when I was a senior investigating officer, I knew that I could speak to most of Fleet Street and some of the broadcast media, just pick the phone up, and we explain things. And if you explain things kind of off the record to them as to what was going on with your investigation and why you didn't need that particular piece of information in the public domain or whatever, then they would respect that because you had this sort of symbiotic relationship and this mutual respect. That's now gone because very strict guidelines were put in place because some people, and a very, very few people, had abused that relationship in the past. And I saw that as being a danger because what it was going to do was mean that journalists were going to seek other sources. They couldn't get it straight from the horse's mouth. And so that's why you end up trying to find people. And of course, then social media came on top of that with social news and whatever you call it. And all of a sudden, it's a very, very different situation in terms of controlling the narrative or influencing the narrative. And I think that police forces generally are kind of behind the curve on that.
No, I could not agree more with you, because I've said this in the past as well, because I was one of those guys on the opposite side of what you're discussing when I was working in Fleet Street, and we used to quite often just go and find ourselves in vagabonds up near Snow Hill Police Station around the back of Farringdon, where you'd run into various characters and even if there was nothing going on, you'd have a chat about things that might be coming up or going on, and it was all a very much more, I suppose some would describe it as a bit too cosy, but it worked better, I think.
Oh, it did work better. I tell you, the case that was a great example to me was Nicola Bulley. Do you remember that? The case.
Yes, I do.
And the poor woman that was running that investigation, that was the first time, I think, really, that the armchair sleuths, the Twitter SIOs, really had an impact on it. And I felt deeply sorry for her. And she had really good reasons in that case not to release some bits of information, and it just made her look shady. It made it look sort of suspicious. The tinfoil hat brigade and the kind of conspiracy theorists came out in their droves, and I thought 20 years ago she'd have just picked up the phone, phoned a journalist, and said, "Look, this is a score. This is why we can't do that." And the journalist would have said, "Understand? Okay, we'll leave it." So that's been lost, and I'm not sure how we regain that until such time as police forces get a little bit more aware of social media and the need to be, if not ahead of the game, certainly catching up with the game.
I think that's right. I mean, Richard Tice was on earlier this morning, and he said exactly that they feel that they're sort of constantly chasing their own tail because they don't really know how to deal with what they're dealing with. And to be fair to them, I suppose, there was not much. I mean, nobody expected in the Nicola Bulley case for these individuals who would normally just see on social media actually physically going there and physically turning up and standing on the riverbank and reporting straight down the line into a live stream. You're kind of going, I was gasped by that. I was like, well, but of course, what can you do about that? You can't really stop it now, can you?
No. And then follow it up by making vile misogynistic comments about how the woman was dressed. I mean, which has no bearing at all on her competency to do an investigation. It was that was, for me, was the kind of turning point. That was when I realised that it's a bit like the Wild West out there, and that's a very different situation to the one we had. And I mean, there's all sorts of things with social media. In fact, the Met Police, who I spent most of my career working for, they've actually done something. They're getting there in some respect, in that they do seem to be monitoring social media more closely and responding more closely. So when you get something put on there which is incorrect because someone's clipped a video down and it doesn't show the whole story or whatever, whereas it was taking 2 or 3 days for a response, now it's taking a matter of hours, and I think that's the right thing to do. They need to have people who are agile and reactive enough to make sure that the truth is out there, because social media is a fantastic weapon for good. It can be. It means people can discuss things. It means people can tell the truth. It means people can trust in what others are saying to a degree, but it needs to have that participation in it from the authorities. And unless they're actually geared up to do that, then they're always going to be lagging behind, and that's where we're going to have a problem. But I think
we woke up this morning, Colin, to pictures on the front page of the Sun and in pictures in other papers of the alleged assailant getting into a car outside his home, carrying what looks like a stick. There's a video as well that's online. I mean, if the police are saying to people, please don't speculate, what's their view going to be of that?
Well, yeah, the view is going to be that's really not helpful to us. That's really not helpful to us because it kind of, just put yourself in the position of the officer that's going to be interviewing this suspect. That suspect now knows what that officer's seen, and so can sort of make his story fit the facts that he knows are on the video that's been into however many million homes it is. So it really is unhelpful. But I think the thing is that post Southport there was a realization that we cannot control the things that we've always controlled, and that's led to a number of occasions when the description of the suspects has been given out very quickly. I mean, I think with the Liverpool Premier League display, parade, man that drove into the crowd. I think it was less than an hour from the incident happening before his description, his ethnicity, and so forth were given. And we saw that again quickly here. The difficulty is that the judgment still needs to be made and will be made that what if it isn't? What if it isn't a British white man? Do we say that straight up front and take what's coming? I would say yes. I say that there is an objective truth, and we have to just deal with that truth, whatever it causes and whatever the reaction is to it. But that's still not the case, and it's this weird. We have a thing in policing. They say you never answer the question as to whether somebody or not's an informant, because as soon as you start answering that question, people will know that if you don't answer it, they're an informant. It's kind of that situation. We now got to the stage where, because this information has been given out quickly after some events, if that information isn't given out, then the Twitter sphere is going to immediately suspect and just really decide that it's the opposite, and that it actually isn't a white British man, and the speculation you're trying so hard to stop just takes off exponentially. So it is a real issue, and it's a real issue in terms of keeping the integrity of the investigation, because don't forget as well that if there are things that have been put into the public domain that affect the evidence, something like, for example, identification evidence. If you've got an eyewitness who you're keeping for an ID parade, and the defence can show that witness might have seen that person's picture in a newspaper or on the internet, then all of a sudden your witness is just completely burned and useless, because you damage that evidence. So that's a good example of it, but there are others, and we need to deal with that. That's a new problem and a new issue, because again, hark back, in the past we the police could control that narrative ourselves. Now there's not that control. We need to find a way of influencing it and making sure that we preserve the integrity of the evidence that we want to bring forward when it comes to trial. And
I mean, Alison Hernandez is the Independent Police Inquiry Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall, and she came out yesterday after the police had said, please don't speculate. She sort of seemed to be slightly more modern, shall we say, because she said, well, of course people are going to speculate. We'd just rather you didn't do it on social media, which is kind of a bit more of a sensible way of saying it, isn't it? Because, I mean, if you are successful as becoming Police Inquiry Commissioner in Norfolk, I mean, what would your relationship be, first of all, with the police there?
very, very, very good and workable. I hope. I mean, I've met the chief constable on a couple of occasions, and he seems a man that I would I would be able to work with. I think the previous PCC in the county wasn't particularly visible, and I think should be. And I think the importance of that role is that it's the link between the public and the police service, and I think you need to be visible and talking to the public and showing that you're fulfilling that role of that link. And so, I see that. Yeah, there's a huge role in policing priorities and controlling the budget, but there's also this public facing role in making sure that the people of Norfolk understand that the police are working for them and working in their interests and not against some higher power or some ideology or all the other things.
So, I mean, would you have recommendations for them, do you think, that might be groundbreaking? What you've been talking about today ultimately sounds very sensible. It sounds like that's the way all police operations should work.
I think it's certainly a conversation that I would have along these lines, and I think I'm in a reasonably good place to speak about it, because having both been a senior investigating officer for many years, I understand the issues and the difficulties that this is causing them, but also having been working with journalists and in the media ever since I retired virtually, that I understand how that works now and how it's changed, and I think that there needs to be an appreciation of how it's changed. And yeah, I mean, in the past, we had press officers or media officers when I was in the Met, and some of them had been sort of converted from admin officers or people who worked on the front desk. They hadn't, and I think you needed people with a journalistic background to understand how journalism works and what went on. So if we transfer that to the current day, then what you probably need in those sorts of roles are people who are really savvy with social media and social news.
I mean, I think the nature of journalism has changed. I mean, I could talk about this subject all day, because, I mean, the people who I used to know all the crime correspondents that you will probably know personally, that I used to know and work with, people like John Toomey from the Express and, all that crowd.
Retirement, actually, yeah.
Yeah, who'd go out at lunchtime and you'd never see them again until they came back with a splash, But, in the end, they've changed as well, because the nature of journalism has changed, because journalism is no longer sort of kicking in doors and chasing people down the street, and it's all a bit more civilized now, and it's all done on computers and it's all done on Google, and it's a very different world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But then part of that change, I think, Mike, has been this withdrawal. I say about 15 years ago, the withdrawal of police from regular and almost social engagement with journalists, and I used to go down to, after we did the Levi Belfield case, it was thought we'd handled the media particularly well on that. And I used to go down to the Police Staff College at Bramshill when we had that, and open the media courses for borough commanders, divisional commanders and senior investigating officers. And I did a bit of a stunt where I'd got a PowerPoint show where it had 4 pages of the Daily Mail, I think it was. And I'd whited out all the stories that related to crime. And all you were left with was the weather forecast and a bit by the Foreign Secretary at the time, and that was it. And I'm saying, look,
wasn't there a Dan Hodges column about how terrible reform were?
No, not in those days. I think he was probably.
I was joking.
It's a long time ago. But the thing was, I said to the people there that newspapers will not go out with all this white space, and if we do not engage, then we lose the opportunity to influence what goes in that white space about crime. And because they're not going to go out with white space, they are going to find their influences and find their information elsewhere. And we not only don't know what the veracity of that or where it comes from, we also have absolutely no influence on it and how it's going to influence our investigation. So the message very much was, this is a symbiotic relationship that ought to continue. And that went through with me all the way up until I did the Night Stalker case. And in 2010, when that all came on, and we'd arrested Delroy Grant, all of a sudden we're not going to engage about this because there are skeletons in the cupboard. We're going to show organisational contrition, which was a lovely phrase, wasn't it, that was invented, So, and that actually means a senior officer wringing his or her hands outside the revolving sign at Scotland Yard, So there was a sea change just as I was leaving the police, and then that other thing came in with Filkin and so forth, and we are where we are now, where we've got this generation of journalists whose first instinct is to criticise, I think, and that has rubbed off on the citizen journalists and the people who use social media, and they start from that position as well.
Indeed. Colin, fascinating stuff. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Good luck as well coming up with the... when was it? Thursday, did you say?
Thursday, yeah. Thursday in Norfolk, 7 till 10. Polling stations are open. We've got the support. We just need people to go out and vote.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, hopefully we'll speak to you afterwards and you'll be victorious. Colin Sutton, brilliant to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Fascinating insights, as somebody just said there. Absolutely, because again, questions that are quite legitimate to ask should be asked. It's as simple as that. You know, we shouldn't be dictated to by the police, who are, after all, public servants. We should be able to find out specifics. Nothing to do with necessarily parts of the case against an individual, but just, you know, specifics about police operations and exactly how they did certain things. It's already interesting to get a view from Colin there about why it's possible that nobody realised that Anne Widdecombe had in fact been murdered when she was first discovered on Thursday. But we'll talk more about that. Harvey Proctor's going to be on the show. Also, Ian Dale from LBC and Jacob Rees-Mogg as well coming up. First, though, now I think we're going to go to Dr. Gavin Ashenden, who will, of course, have a view of Anne Widdecombe and her legacy, I suppose. We put out, Gavin, a very good morning to you, under, you know, what are unfortunately rather sad circumstances. We've got a poll going on at the moment as to how we think Anne should be remembered. And it could possibly be all of the above. It should basically be, should she have a statue in Westminster, was one. Should she have an academic scholarship, perhaps, was the second one. And also we've been asking whether or not if you think a posthumous damehood would be appropriate, or maybe a memorial library. And the more I look at it, actually, the more I think perhaps all of the above. But at the moment, a posthumous damehood, I don't know whether that's possible.
Hello, Mike. Well, excuse my portable studio. Great to join you. Since the left hates statues, I'd go for a statue. And I think it would be the most wonderful way in which we could express our admiration, but also the fact that although we're yet to hear from the police what the motivation of the Rotherham poll man was, it's inconceivable that it's not political. I mean,
yes.
Anne was only known on a political platform. I can't imagine he's come to take vengeance on her incompetent dancing. So, you know, if it's not that, then it's political. What I'm waiting to find out is whether or not this is going to be the flashpoint at which people say, we're not going to have our way of life destroyed in this way. And Anne represents that way of life. It looks as though, again, rather like Southport, the police are doing everything they can to keep a lid on things. But in a sense, we almost don't need to know the motivation of the Rotherham poll man, because we see the motivation of the left from the outpouring of hatred and violence and bile that followed her death.
Yes.
We know already we're in a violent struggle with a hate-filled opposition who wants to stop the kind of freedom of speech that Anne stood for.
Yeah, and if we are supposedly to believe, as the police are hinting that we should believe, that perhaps this is a guy who was upset by the death of his father, who had some mental illness or other, and who was a bit of a loner, didn't go out very much, but that, you know, he chose to exhibit whatever violent streak that he had, not by going next door and attacking somebody or going into the local town in Rotherham and going on a sort of, you know, running over some people in a car. No, he chose to get in his car, drive 300 miles south to a specific address where a specific individual lived that he must have known, and decided to wreak whatever revenge he thought he was going to wreak. How can that not be in some way driven by a political agenda?
Well, we're back into Welsh choirboy territory.
Yeah.
The fact is, the police are deliberately representing the facts in a way that is intended to defuse the fury and the anger of people who know that their freedom of conscience, freedom of action, freedom of expression, and freedom of faith is threatened.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid that, you know, the very fact again that the police are presenting this man as educationally challenged, rather than a malign actor with a political axe to grind, practicing assassination in our culture, is part of the problem we have.
Yeah, it really is. And just talking to Colin Sutton there, it was interesting that many people now believe, certainly people of his sort of age, that the mistake the police have made over time is that, one, they've tried to be too politically correct. They've stopped having sort of personal relationships with journalists, and so they've created their own vacuum, if you like, because instead of somebody being able to make a phone call, to a couple of journalists to say, look, this is what's going on, but we'd rather you kept it off the record, and we'd rather you didn't reveal it at the moment. I remember the days when you do what was called a background on a court case, so that you would basically be allowed to see all the evidence beforehand, and you would write it all up so that on the day of either conviction or whatever, you could then publish it. You didn't have to suddenly run around and I think they still do that, but they clearly don't like the fact that journalists are asking them questions they don't want to answer.
Well, I'd like to take the argument a whole load further. I think we're past all of that. We know all, with all due respect, you've expressed it very clearly, but we know all of that, and nothing's going to change. We need a new police force. I dare say we need a system a bit like the States, where you have, if you like, the local state authorities and the federal authorities. I don't see any difficulty in the police force being kept to serve the state with its capacity for dealing with global issues. But in terms of local people to protect us on the streets, we want what they call vigilantes, but what we used to call police force. We want local people to be accountable to us, to police us. We don't want these people anymore. They're ideologues. So the short answer to your question is they're not going to improve because the people running the system have been brainwashed into being social activists. In other words, they're fully paid up, trained people of the left. We want community policing that we can trust and that will not automatically treat a white man as guilty before anything else happens.
Right. Or not only that, but automatically treat a white man as differently to somebody who he may not be white. They were very quick at the release of the information that the person they were seeking was white. I don't think I've ever seen them issue a plea to look for somebody who is not white. Have you?
No, it's racist. No, but it's racism to say we've arrested somebody and he's white, so you don't think he's black. But he might or might not be. That's racism. It's the inverse racism for which we're being trapped by. The difficulty is racism is such an important issue because it's the means by which we've been held mentally captive. I'm not even sure there is such a thing as racism in the sense that the scientists can't tell us what constitutes a race. So it makes it much more difficult for the political activists to have a guilty pay crime. What they really mean is we don't like it when you don't love your neighbor. Christians have always had an answer to that. We're determined to love our neighbor, but we don't want to be forced into it by the threat of a spurious race crime. We have to try, if we possibly can, to get to the roots of this idea of racism, which is being used against us and which is in fact utterly spurious as a concept.
Yes, indeed. Gavin, I'd love to ask you about Anne's kind of beliefs as well and her religious love for her faith, but we're literally running it a bit out late, so I'm going to get you on later in the week if you don't mind. At which point we can explore that. It's always lovely to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed, Gavin Ashenden there with his take on the state of the police in this country, which is not exactly at a high point, shall we say. The reason we have to run is because we've got such a busy day today on the show. Harvey Proctor's coming up shortly. Marilyn Hawes is here. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Ian Dale. Greg Swenson will be in the studio as well because there's been a story in America that we need to look at, which is the death of Lindsey Graham, a senator who was very close to Donald Trump, who died suddenly over the weekend, aged 71, I think it was. And the FBI are now involved in probing what may or may not have happened to him. He'd just come back from Ukraine, and he was thought to have been very critical of the Russian government as well, so we'll get into that too. Right now, though, Harvey Proctor is here.
No, Mark Little first.
Oh, sorry, Mark Little. Right, Mark Littlewood, you mean?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, you've confused the hell out of me.
Yeah.
She keeps changing the schedule on me, Mark, so, it's a bit like playing the World Cup final and not expecting to see who's coming on next. How are you, sir?
Well, not too bad, Mike. I've been on the run a bit over the last few days. I'm up in Scotland, Mike. And that's why I'm wearing this Argentina shirt. I've been told to wear this in order to try and blend in with the locals. It seems to be working so far.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably the biggest selling shirt up there at the moment, isn't it? Because they've had to go and get a free exchange on the Scotland one.
And there's also plenty of Mexico and Norway shirts going at the second-hand shops in Scotland now as well, Mike.
Yes, I mean, it was quite a game, wasn't it? I mean, we all watched it, I think. Most people did anyway, who were watching this show. It wasn't too late, 10 o'clock at night. I remember just before it started, there was some word on social media that it might be delayed by storms, but it wasn't in the end. And it could have gone either way for me.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. We got a slice of luck. Few controversial moments in the game. They hit the bar. They had a goal ruled out, I think rightly. A couple of decisions could have got a bit more England's way. I still think that Harry Kane was indeed fouled in the build-up to Norway's first goal. I still think Jed Spence was taken down for a penalty. That certainly would have been given in the Premier League, in my view. There's a few controversies coming out over the VAR usage in the World Cup as well, Mike, because they're using it differently to the way that we're used to them using it in the Premier League. But when all is said and done, it was a classic example, Mike, of a game of football that can be turned by one star player. And Jude Bellingham is on fire at the moment. And if he can turn it on just for a minute here or a minute there, England have got a chance against anyone. And he was just too much for the Norwegians on Saturday. So there you go.
I didn't make it past the first Argentina goal, I'm afraid, so I haven't really seen that game. But by that time, I was wilting and had to disappear off to bed. But I mean, I sort of hesitate to bring it up because I think it's a bit of a confected row. But the row that's going on now because of what happened after the game when Thomas Tuchel was interviewed by the ITV reporter and he said that, he thought they didn't play very well. Which I think was a fair comment, actually. And it seems to me that the ITV guy sort of got it round his ears the wrong way, didn't he?
Yes, I think that's right. And Gabriel Pogran, I think it was the ITV reporter, also pressed Tuchel on the mentality of the team and whether there was a problem there. And the England manager didn't like that very much. He said, look, there's no problem with the mentality. We just need to play better. So I thought what was great about that interview, or at least how Tuchel handled it, and indeed Jude Bellingham being interviewed later, is this was unmedia trained. This was Tuchel speaking straight from his heart, and Bellingham likewise. Who, when Jude Bellingham was put to Jude, look, your manager says you haven't really played that well, and Bellingham just said, well, yeah, whatever. So you actually got some genuine media interviews there. I think it all indicates actually that it's a pretty happy camp, the England camp at the moment, and it hasn't always been so. Solidarity in the team looks good. Look, of the 4 teams remaining now, anyone can win it. I wouldn't say England are the nailed-on favourites, but I'd say we've pretty much got a chance, as good a chance as any of the rest. And actually, we are the favourites to overcome Argentina in the semi-final on Wednesday night.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't bet against it, would you? I mean, I'm certainly saying that. The only thing that worries me slightly is that apparently if England do make it to the final, there's a chance that both Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham will go and witness it. And you just think, no! Because, I mean, talk about the two Jonahs, you don't want them hanging around. An Everton fan and Keir Starmer, who every time he went to see Arsenal made them lose.
Yeah, I'm worried about that as well, Mike. As you'll know, kind of all football fans tend to be pretty superstitious people. So I'd much rather that the outgoing or incoming Prime Minister absented themselves. But look, unfortunately, Keir Starmer's still searching for a legacy, isn't he? And as someone who's interested in football, I'm sure he'd quite like his legacy to claim that he had single-handedly won the World Cup for England by being there. But yeah, I prefer them both to stay away. The good news, Mike, is that the next games are at very civilised times. So I might be able to get some sleep at last. It's 8 o'clock on Wednesday. And if we make it, then it's Sunday evening for the final. So we're getting to the end of what's been a pretty amazing tournament, actually. I've loved every minute of it.
A lot better than I thought it was going to be. And today at midday, I'm told that you're not necessarily in the chair. Is that right?
Yeah, because I'm on the run for complex legal reasons, which we'll go into on my show, Mike. Apparently, I'm wanted for smuggling into the country contraband Panini football stickers. So I'm constantly being on the move. We've got some footage of that, me trying to keep one step ahead of the stormtroopers over the weekend. But I'm going to be trying and joining to join Paul Cox, my wingman, who's kindly agreed to anchor the show. But I hope to be able to join from the train that I'll be escaping on. So yeah, I'll be there if I possibly can, and if the tech holds up. But don't worry, the show will and must go on, and we've got a lot of football over the weekend, of course, to reflect upon. And we're going to start previewing the last couple of matches, right?
Yeah.
2 semi-finals, 1 semi-final, and if anybody cares about it, 1 third place playoff final to go. So 100 matches down, 4 to go, Mike.
Fantastic stuff. Mark, it's been brilliant as ever. Thank you very much indeed. And keep changing your disguises. And you just keep changing your shirts, you'll be fine. Mark Littlewood there, coming up on the World Cupper as a guest today, because he's on, as he says, on the run somewhere in North Britain, as some people call it, or otherwise known as Scotland. Is it Paul Cox going to be doing it? Yeah. So we'll look forward to that. Kelvin McKenzie coming up at 10 o'clock. We got Ian Dale at 9 o'clock. Jacob Rees-Mogg just before that. Harvey Proctor, I think is with us right now, though, is he? Harvey, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers and listeners.
It's obviously been a very difficult weekend for many of us, Harvey. You knew Anne Widdecombe perhaps better than many people did, both as a former colleague but also as a friend who was very much in support of you when you were having your difficulties.
Under the letter heading, yes, she became a Member of Parliament when I left the House of Commons, but I do know that she was a great parliamentarian, and whenever she got up to speak in the chamber of the House, the chamber would fill to hear what she had to say. That did not happen for all.
No.
So, yes, a great lady, a great orator, a wonderful parliamentarian, and she was very good at standing by me in my darkest days.
Yes, and it has been a very shocking story, hasn't it? I mean, we were here last on Friday, obviously, when we were very sad and upset to hear of the fact that she died, and we didn't know at that point the circumstances of what had happened to her. But now that we do know that, it's been truly, I think, really devastating for an awful lot of people, even for many of my viewers who didn't know Anne, but just who watched her. She was on here every week, normally on a Monday, at around about this time, actually. And we'll be playing a little tribute to her. I think it's the nature of what's happened and the fact that it's so unusual, I suppose, and hard to imagine. And I know that the police, and I have not been one of those who's been particularly speculating on it, but the police have asked for people not to speculate. But there's an awful lot of questions, aren't there, that people, I think quite rightly, probably want to know the answers to.
Well, you're right. There was sadness, and then a degree of anger. And before we get into anything with regard to speculation, let me extend my condolences again to the family and friends of Anne.
Yeah.
To those who supported her and regarded her to be a great personality, let me say I share their grief too.
And I think that we've been asking a question, and you may be able to answer this one, of our listeners and viewers this morning. We've got a little poll of how would Anne like to be remembered, or maybe how should she be remembered, because I think that she was a very modest woman in terms of the way that she viewed her own sort of usefulness, if you like. But we've said, how should our Anne be remembered? An academic scholarship, perhaps, a statue in Westminster, a posthumous damehood. A lot of people surprised that she wasn't in the House of Lords already, or perhaps some kind of memorial library. I mean, as somebody who knew her quite well, do you think she would be sort of slightly put off by all of this attention?
I think she would have wanted none of that. I think the establishment have a great burden that she was not ennobled when she was alive.
Yeah.
And that is to the detriment of our political establishment. can I say about speculation that it is quite right that none of us should speculate, whether in the media or, as some have done, politicians have done. There should be no speculation about this matter. What should happen is the correct person should be apprehended and prosecuted, and if found guilty, punished. And can I say that speculation should also not be occurring by the police. None of us, including the police, should speculate at this time. It is too distressing for words.
Yes, I mean, a lot of people have doubted the police's assertion that that there was no political motivation, because people have said, well, how would they know that at this point? One, because at the same time, they've also said they're not looking for anybody else, which in a way is speculation of its own, isn't it?
I do not wish to criticise the police, who, especially in murder investigations, have a very difficult job to do. And I think they should get on with it, free of speculation from anyone else and free of themselves speculating until they know what has happened and why it's happened, if they come to that conclusion.
Yes.
It may be for all sorts of legal reasons that we have to wait until any court case takes place. That is distressing for many people, but I think it is better for the course of justice to follow a correct course.
Yes. I mean, the trouble is, in this day and age, Harvey, that the world is slightly different, isn't it? In terms of, I mean, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall has said actually that she understands that people will speculate. She just would rather they didn't do it on social media, which is a sort of slightly more, I suppose, realistic suggestion than the one from the police, which is just don't speculate at all, because people will do it. And I know you've been critical of Nigel Farage in the Times this morning. They're reporting that. But would you say that you have some sympathy for Reform MPs who would like to find out if there's anything that they should be worried about in terms of their own safety?
Well, I think in due course, all MPs will be anxious to know whether there's anything in this that's relevant to them. I would caution this, that some current politicians think that attacks on politicians are somehow new. I remember that when I was first elected to Parliament in 1979, Erin Eve had just been blown up by the IRA under Big Ben. Strangely, I was on the phone from Fleet Street, where I then worked for the Paper Industry Federation, to our parliamentary agents in the press gallery of the House of Commons. And on that phone call, I heard the explosion that killed Erin Eve. In that parliamentary election in 1979, every candidate was allocated 2 detectives to look after them throughout the course of the campaign. So this idea that threats to members of Parliament are new, somehow new, and should be talked about now is not correct. When I was a member of Parliament, I was frequently attacked when I spoke at universities. I had acid thrown at me, as well as many other things, when I was a member of Parliament. So let us not exaggerate the position. I believe there's a statement in the House of Commons today on the security of members of Parliament. It has to be constantly looked at. I agree on that, but let's not over-exaggerate these matters.
Okay.
Our main focus should be on what has happened to a dear friend, Anne Widdecombe.
And do you have a favourite memory, Harvey, that you could share with us?
Well, I think my memory must be personal, that when I had difficulties in 2015 under the accusations that the Metropolitan Police said was credible and true, very few people stayed with me. And Widdecombe was one, both publicly and privately. And that personal thought is what I think about now.
Yes, Harvey, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and it's a very upsetting time for all of us, I think. Really wish you well. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Harvey
Thank
Proctor,
you.
with him memories there of Anne Widdecombe. We're going to speak to Jacob Rees-Mogg shortly, but just before that, I don't know if I should call it a meltdown really, but I'd quite like to make a little tribute to Anne. But you can play the little meltdown, I guess, if you like, because she probably would appreciate it. It's been a very tough few days for many of us and for many of you as well. I was privileged to know Anne Widdecombe, as you know. I was pretty upset on Friday when I was here last because of the news that had been so shocking that she'd been found dead. And also, of course, Bishop Kai Dewar had made the most amazing eulogy for Anne and talked about what a great individual she was, what a superb orator she was, how friendly she was, how kind she was. And over the course of the last few days, we've learned of how much help she gave to so many people, not just people that were known to her, but people who were not known to her. So many young people who met her in the world of politics, so many younger politicians who said she was like a mentor to them when they went into the House of Commons. Many people shunned them, many people didn't speak to them. She was always happy to have a cup of tea with people. She was always very happy to give them words of sage advice if they needed it. And she was just always somebody who was a very unique individual, very strong-willed. You just heard from Harvey Proctor there. Whenever she used to speak in Parliament, the place would be full to the gunnels, which you don't see very often because people wanted to hear what she had to say. People were enthralled by her intellect, loved some of the opinions that she had and shared, and really also admired the steadfast way in which she stood up for things. We've seen, and I don't wish to dwell on the nastiness of the left, the people who didn't like some of her beliefs and who, as a result, were really, really unkind and horrible about her passing. I don't wish to dwell on them. But I do think, despite what Harvey Proctor said then, it would be nice to remember Anne in some way. We've got a poll which says, should we remember her with a statue? Should we remember her with some kind of scholarship of some kind? Should we remember her with, instead, a memorial library? Or perhaps, something like a posthumous damehood. I'm not sure if that's possible to do, but I think a lot of people would like to see something like that. And Harvey, of course, said, she wouldn't want any of that. And that's partly why we love her so much, because she was so unlikely to be festooned with self-importance. She was not self-important. We played you the clip earlier of how she said, you don't get many rehearsals in life. Life is about going full out and doing it. We heard over the weekend that one of her neighbours and friends had said to her, why don't you think about getting some kind of electronic gate for security? But she didn't want one. She didn't care. She didn't have much protection, although she did have at least a Ring doorbell, which hopefully means that the police can know exactly who has been there and who went there at the time when they believe she was murdered. So I think we can all say thank you to Anne Widdecombe for being part of our lives, and we can all say thank you for her steadfastness, for her absolute reliability to say things that made complete and utter common sense. You didn't have to agree with everything that she said, and she wouldn't want you to. But the point is, the bottom line is, she is the kind of politician that we need in this country, the kind of politician that we want. And before we get criticised even more by the police or by journalists for speculating on what might have happened, you know, I would rather that we have questions answered, and I would rather that we still had the right to ask those questions. We should not be being silenced by the police or the authorities or anybody else. And I think in order for people to understand why many of the Reform MPs are concerned about what happened is because they feel very much that if this was motivated in some way against Anne because of her associations with Reform and because of her beliefs, then they need to know. It's really that simple. But we will continue today and every day this week to honour Anne Widdecombe, and we thank you very much for all of your kind words that you've said as well. And let me say this, may she rest in peace, and we will never forget her. Lots of you have got super chats coming in. Thank you very much indeed for sending them, because of course we very much appreciate them. We really do. We'll read some of them out very shortly, but a lot of people very, very upset still. The thought is too distressing for words. We are devastated, says Kathy, I think it is. Mr. Proctor is correct, I think, but people have lost trust in the police and the courts. Justine says you can't trust the police, the solicitors or judges anymore. It feels as though it's state controlled. I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because unfortunately, it's all very well for the police to say they want us to behave in a particular way, but it's not that easy for people to ignore what they see in front of their faces. And we now live in a world where information is constantly in front of you. And therefore, so is misinformation. And like all of these situations, whenever there is a vacuum of information, somebody fills it. And that's what happens. Let's talk now, though, to Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is joining us. I don't know if he's in Somerset. Jacob, very good morning to you. Hello, Jacob, are you there?
Muted himself, it says.
I think you may have muted yourself, it's saying here. Jacob?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now. Thank you. Very good to see you.
Good.
Thank you. My apologies. Sorry. Thank you very much for joining us. I understand you can't be in vision for us. Obviously, a very, very sad weekend for many people, myself included. Anne Widdecombe was somebody that I was not incredibly close friends with, but who I've known for years and years and years, met many times, interviewed countless times. Normally speaking, she would be on here every Monday at this time, actually. Tell us about your memories of Anne, if you would.
Well, my relationship to her was similar to yours, that I'd known her a long time, since the early 90s when she became a Catholic, because we used to go to the same church in the Horseferry Road, and we both knew Father Michael Seed well, who is a wonderful priest, very, very frail nowadays, but a wonderful and holy priest who had helped bring her into the Catholic Church. And she was somebody, it was always fun to meet because she knew what she thought and she wasn't afraid to say it. You therefore have the most wonderful conversations with somebody who you agreed with on most things, but not on everything. I remember her saying about fox hunting, which she was against, but a lot of Conservatives were in favour of, and she'd given a speech, and somebody had said, well, what about fox hunting? And she said, well, you can't have everything, making it clear that they agreed with her and she agreed with them on so much, but not everything, because she had her own views and her own principles, and that was her great strength.
It really was, and she was able to kind of reach out, like so many successful MPs, in my view, or successful politicians, a bit like yourself. You don't just have a narrow base. You have a lot of people who might disagree with you, but who rather admire what you do and how you do it.
Well, I think Anne was hugely respected, and she didn't judge people. She had very strong views and very clear principles. She knew what she thought was right and what she thought was wrong, but she dealt with individuals as she met them, as she knew them, and recognized them as being made in the image and likeness of God. And I think that was very important to her, and her faith underlay everything that she did.
Yes. And I mean, in this day and age, obviously, that is not always seen as something positive. And we saw, unfortunately, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but an awful lot of people who were opposed to her views being rather unnecessarily savage and horrible about the fact that she had died. I'm not quite sure how Britain has become such a terrible place.
No, I was surprised by that, particularly by people who one normally respects being very unpleasant after somebody had died.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any defence to say that they said it before they knew she was murdered.
No.
I think that it was just unpleasant to say it full stop, and they
Yeah.
shouldn't have said it. Most of them have apologised. And what I would encourage them to do is not to put up formulaic apologies, but to pray for the repose of her soul. There is something they can do that is positive to make up for the offence that they have caused. And so I think people like Adam Bolton should pray for the repose of her soul.
Well, that would be nice. I'm not sure that he's capable of such forgiveness of himself, you know. But that's another matter. But in terms of her remembrance, I spoke to Harvey Procter a moment ago, who said that one of the things that he was so genuinely shocked at was the nature of what had happened to her, and that we shouldn't really speculate on what had happened to her. But on the subject, which is becoming a kind of a hot topic of debate as to whether or not there was political motivation. What's your view of that? Because I think that I know that some have criticised, certainly Nigel Farage and some of the Reform MPs for asking questions or for saying things, but surely people would understand that for them this could be quite a dangerous situation in their cases.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask questions. I don't accept this line that the police should have complete silence to be allowed to get on with things. They don't always get on with things very successfully,
Right.
and it's perfectly reasonable for people to discuss what may have happened and to raise very obvious questions. I mean, from what we know, somebody seems to have driven hundreds of miles, allegedly, to carry out this murder. Now, if that turns out to be the case, and obviously the man they've arrested is innocent until proved guilty, that is a different case from a burglary gone wrong. And I think people are entitled to discuss this and think about the safety of politicians and high-profile public figures if that was what actually happened. So I don't think Reform has behaved badly. I think it's raising perfectly reasonable questions. And it's going against reality to think that nobody will discuss this. It is very important to understand what has happened in these terrible, terrible circumstances.
Well, it does seem to me that I think the police commissioner for Devon and Cornwall said something slightly more sensible than the assistant chief constable when she said, well, of course people will speculate. It's human nature. We'd just rather they didn't do it perhaps on social media, because it's ridiculous to assume that people won't talk about it.
Well, in terms of the sub judice rules, you have to think, would it influence some future jury? And it seems to me that that's very unlikely at this stage,
Right.
when we know very little about what has happened, and a jury will be faced with full sets of evidence. And people are thinking in general terms, not in the specifics. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to have these discussions. And as you rightly say, and as the Police and Crime Commissioner said, it's human nature to want to have these discussions.
And I know that you're a student of parliamentary history, and some of us we've asked the question this morning as to how should we remember Anne. I'm sure that she would say, don't talk such absolute nonsense, and you don't need to do anything at all. But I've suggested at least perhaps a statue in Westminster, or perhaps some kind of posthumous damehood. I'm not sure if that's even allowable in the House of Lords. A scholarship of some kind, or maybe a memorial library. What would you say?
Well, I think a scholarship of some kind actually would be the most useful thing, perhaps to help young people get involved in politics.
Yes, I think that would be a wonderful legacy for her to have. Do you have a favourite moment you'd like to share with us from your time with her?
Oh, well, I mean, she was always fun, but it was wonderful when she came to speak for me in my association, and she stayed with us overnight. She'd come all the way from Kent to Somerset. She was very good at helping people, and this was when I was very early on in my political career. And we've got in our visitors' book, in her big handwriting, Anne Widdecombe, wonderful breakfast in bed. And it was just, she was such a wonderfully ebullient figure. Everything was fun for Anne, with her very strong beliefs, making sure that she didn't give you any quarter if she disagreed.
No, absolutely. I think most people's remembrances are so lovely to hear. Absolutely beautiful. Jacob, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. I say good to see you. Good to hear you, I should probably say more
Yeah, no,
accurately.
you can only hear me. I'm very reluctant to do amateur filming. I think filming's best done professionally. So forgive me for just coming.
No, not at all. Well, I mean, you did a very lovely little vignette for not for us, but on your show the other day, talking about my show being a great success. So thank you for that.
Not at all. It is. So congratulations.
No, thank you, and we'll see you again soon. Hopefully, perhaps in the studio.
You.
Jacob
Thanks so
Rees-Mogg there.
much.
Thank you, with his appreciation. Always terribly civilised, isn't it? Nice. I love the fact that he's got a visitor's book in his house. I mean, you know, God, imagine that. Imagine having a visitor's book in your own house. I'm delighted now to talk to somebody that I've never actually had on my show, surprisingly, because it's somebody that I've always wanted to talk to and always wanted to have a conversation with about a great many things. He's got a new book out, of course, right now, and his name is Mr. Ian Dale. Is he coming?
Good morning.
Good morning, Ian. Good to see you. How are you?
Hi. I don't mind doing amateur video, Mike, so your viewers will have to suffer my ugly features.
Well, do you know, one of the great things about Zoom, I think, is that people kind of take an interest in the backgrounds of people's houses, and actually they find sometimes the more amateur, the better. You know, some of the things that they notice are really quite bizarre. But listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really great to see you. You're somebody that I've admired. I don't wish to turn it into a bit of hagiography, but I have admired you from afar for a long time. And you were very kind last year when I was having a few troubles of my own to send me a note when you didn't really know me very well. And it was much appreciated. So thank you for that. And your new book is Have I Said Too Much? And I like the fact that on the front you've got a David Cameron quote saying, absolutely not, no, keep going, keep talking.
I'm sure there are plenty of people that think I have said too much over the years, but plenty of proof out there.
No, well, I'm not one of them. I guess we should start with our Widdecombe, really, because it's been a terrible, terrible few days. I did the last show here, it was on a Friday, when we didn't know before we went off the air that she'd actually been murdered. And when I saw in the afternoon that was the suggestion, I couldn't really believe it. It was awful.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. When I woke up on Friday morning, I got text after text saying, sending you my condolences over Anne. And I was thinking, Anne who? What are they talking about? And then when I realised who they were talking about, I thought, oh, 78, that's no age nowadays to die. Both her parents died in their mid-90s. So my first reaction, apart from obviously being terribly sad and shedding a little tear, was that the fact that she's had probably a decade or more robbed from her. And you know, Mike, she was supposedly in retirement. Well, it's not what you and I would call retirement. She was barnstorming up and down the country talking for reform. She did, I know she did your show every week. She did Jeremy Vine's show and all sorts of others. And she loved it. And all of that's been ripped away from her now. It's so sad.
It really is. And it's the kind of most unexpected person as well, isn't it? I mean, of all of the various, I don't know what you would call sort of divisive characters in politics even. I mean, even though people disagreed with some of the things she said, she wasn't divisive in my view anyway.
Well, the thing is, we have seen both the best and worst of humanity over the last 2 or 3 days, where we've seen... I mean, I've never really understood, why is it that the people who try and make a virtue out of being the nice people in society on the left, they seem to always be the ones that say terrible things when someone on the right dies. Now, I think you and I will agree that if, God forbid, Jeremy Corbyn died tomorrow, you and I would both be respectful.
Of course.
I mean, I know Jeremy. I mean, I would be sad. I don't obviously agree with him on anything. But he was a bit similar to Anne in the sense that he is a conviction politician, and conviction politicians, as Tony Benn used to say, signposts rather than weather vanes. They will always upset people. But this idea that you can't respect somebody whose views you disagree with, I mean, it's awful. And some of the comments that we've seen, I mean, Jacob there was talking about some of this. I mean, he didn't name anybody. Well, I will. The only reason I went to London on Friday evening to tour the studios to defend Anne's reputation was because of people like Peter Tatchell and Adam
Yeah.
Bolton, who, I mean, I've always respected Peter Tatchell. Again, I don't agree with him on an awful lot, but I've always thought, well, his heart's in the right place, even if I don't agree with all of his causes. And he is a very brave campaigner. But to apparently rejoice in her death, I thought, well, that is beneath you. And for the things that Adam Bolton said in that interview on Sky, again, Adam's a good friend of mine, but I can't let things stand that are just plain wrong. I mean, he repeated this old myth about her wanting to shackle women prisoners in Labour. Never happened.
Right.
She sued the Daily Express over it. It's absolute fiction. And yet
Yeah.
he and Edwina Curry were...
Oops.
I think he's gone.
What's he done?
He just disappeared.
Okay. Well, would he have hit something?
Looks like it, yeah.
Oh, we'll try and get Ian Dale back.
He's back.
Oh, he's back. Sorry, don't know what happened there. Just lost you for a second. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can he see you?
Can he see me? He looks like he can't see us. We're talking to Ian Dale, whose new book, Have I Said Too Much? He certainly hasn't said too much because we haven't finished talking to him. You want to try again?
Yeah, no, I think he's reconnecting.
I think he's reconnecting. Yeah, so his book is out on Biteback, £22, hardback, you can get it. He's interviewed so many great people, which I'm going to ask him about in a minute, including, by the way, Queen Elizabeth II, as well as Kylie Minogue, Sir Cliff Richard, Terry Pratchett, 12 of our 58 Prime Ministers, which is no bad thing. That sounds like the sound that we need to know. Sounds like the sound that we'd like to hear. I think you back. Are you back?
Sorry, yeah, I'm back. So the Jeremy Vine show just did a WhatsApp call and it cut you off. So I should be berating them in a moment.
This is what happens, you know. The rivals are all, you know, they're so jealous of me. They're trying to cut me off all the time. Although there was a time when I was at Talk where it used to happen between Talk and GB News that we had a former GB News producer who said they're just interviewing Harry Redknapp. If we call him now, we'll cut him off. And they actually did that, and I was like, don't do it in my name, you know. But it can be done deliberately. But anyway, listen. One of the things I love about your show on LBC is the way that you talk to the audience, because I was a great fan. We're not able to do it in quite the same way here yet, but we're working on it. But one of the great things about having people phoning in is that you occasionally get that gem, don't you, where they say something just really stupid, and you just go for them, which is what I love. And as much as sometimes you love a nice caller, you sometimes love a kind of a slightly idiotic one.
Yeah, we had one of those last week. I'm trying to remember what he was.
That's the one I'm thinking
saying.
of, and I think you said something like. I was going to say, I think you said something like, he said, well, why do you think this? And you just went, well, because you're a prat or something like that, which was very good.
Yeah, which I don't do regularly, because, I mean, you know what it's like. If you're doing a phone-in show, you have to respect your audience. If you just constantly berate them and insult them and be rude to them, I mean, who wants to listen to that for 3 hours?
Yeah.
So, I think you have to reflect what the rest of the audience is thinking. If you think that the rest of the audience is thinking this guy is just a jerk, you kind of need to reflect that in how you deal with them.
Yes, no, absolutely right. And I'm not going to pretend I've read the book. I've read bits of it that I've been able to see.
Shame on you, Mike Graham.
I'm terribly sorry. Well, I'm trying to build a business here, Ian. You know, people go, what do you do for your spare time? I said, not reading. But you've interviewed the Queen. Tell us about that.
Well, I didn't interview her because the Queen never did any interviews. But when I was in the world of publishing, there was a reception at Buckingham Palace for the publishing sector. So I went along, and I mean, I'd never met the Queen before. And my partner said to me, look, if we stand here, she's got to pass this bit of the room if she's going to leave. So we stood there, and indeed, it was absolutely right. I spent about 5 minutes talking to her, and I don't know if you've been to one of these things where there's one person who's the centre of attention. Everyone wants to have a bit of them. And so during this 5-minute conversation, I had all sorts of people trying to elbow their way into it, but I have quite sharp elbows. and she was really easy to talk to. She had this reputation for not really having much small talk, but she was very into her political gossip.
Yeah.
This was about 20 years ago. Geoffrey Robinson, who was a Labour minister, he was involved in some sort of scandal at the time. And she said to me, "What do you think's going to happen to Mr. Robinson?"
Yeah.
And it was she was much nicer and easier to talk to than I had feared she might be.
Yes, I mean she was quite a remarkable woman, wasn't she, in all sorts of different ways. I mean, I found myself strangely in Horse Guards Parade last Thursday night at a sort of concert, and I was inside Wellington Barracks where I'd never been before, talking to a couple of the high up army bods in there, and they were still very much of the impression that it's not been the same really since the Queen left, because she was far more interested in the army and the armed forces really than, shall we say, the current incumbents.
That slightly surprises me because, of course, the King was in the Royal Navy, so I'd have thought he'd have been a big supporter of the armed forces. But maybe, look, she was there for so long that it was almost impossible to imagine her not being there. We all knew that one day she wouldn't be, but I think it was the end of an era.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'd have to ask you, who has been your kind of most difficult interview that you've had? Have you had one of those? We're watching the clip this morning of Dale Vince storming out of the interview with Camilla Tominey. I don't know if you've seen that. But I mean, we've all had them. Have you had a particularly terrible one?
I can't remember anyone walking out. I mean, I have ended a couple of interviews sort of like over Zoom. I've never had anyone walk out the studio. I've had people. I remember once Zach Polanski, he was on my Cross Question programme, sort of panel show. And Annabelle Denham from The Telegraph was one of the other panellists, and he called her a racist. And I just said, hang on, you need to apologise for that. She said nothing that you could accuse her, that you could justify that accusation. I'm not having people on my show throwing accusations of racism around. Apologise right now, or there will be a consequence.
Yeah.
And he, first of all, refused to. And then I thought, what do I do now? I mean, do I actually chuck him out of the studio? Which, I mean, in a live show is quite a thing to do. He wasn't leader then. And he issued a sort of, well, if you're offended, I'm sorry type apology. And I thought, well, okay, well, I'll leave it at that. But I basically benched him for 6 months after that, because I just won't have that. Boris Johnson was always the one that I found the most difficult to interview, because he would, if he was in the studio with you, he would look around, he would never look you in the eye. He would look around the studio anywhere but where you were. It's quite difficult to interrupt someone when they do that. And then I'd have to explain to him that, and he would do a sort of like 2-minute monologue. And I would have to explain to him, Boris, the idea of an interview is that I ask a question, you answer it, I come back, yes, great man, and every interview was the same. I mean, it was a real challenge, I found, interviewing him.
But isn't it also now the case that an awful lot of, particularly government ministers now, I mean, I didn't used to get them on much. I mean, I'd get sort of 1 out of 4 or 5 on the morning round when Labour got in, and when I was at Talk, and they kind of just don't answer questions anymore. It's really hard to get them to answer a question, and you have to almost be quite rude about it.
Yes, that is true. And again, you have to reflect what your audience are thinking, because you are there to ask the questions on behalf of your audience. And if you feel that somebody is trying to pull the wool over your eyes or lying to you, you've got to be quite aggressive. Now, I'm sort of more Des O'Connor than Jeremy Paxman in the way that I interview people, because I think you actually get more out of people if you adopt that approach. But I will mix it with the best of them. If I feel somebody's just coming out with the usual old sound bites and not answering the question, I'll let them have it, and they know it.
Yeah, and you flirted with the idea of being a Tory MP not that long ago, it seems to me. Do you think you'd ever go and try that again, or have you learned your lesson?
Yeah, because it went so well. Look, I stood for Parliament in 2005, and if you're involved in politics, the virus never quite goes away. You think you've got rid of it, but actually you haven't. And so I had to go into 2024, and it didn't end well, because the Lib Dems found some comments I'd made about the constituency I wanted to represent, which should we say were fairly disobliging, and that was it. So I'd resigned from LBC. In the end, I mean, luckily they'd told me if it all went wrong, I'd always have a job there, which was good of them. And I only missed 3 programmes, so I was back on the air almost.
I remember that. was quite a cool thing, actually. We thought, and now I know you've got to run, so I don't want to keep you from being late. But you're off to Edinburgh again this year because you've got your very successful show. I actually had a great time. I went. Was it 2 years ago? It must have been now. Alex Salmond, who became quite a good friend of mine, decided he wanted to do a kind of a.
Me too. Yeah, I took part in that too.
Oh, I think okay. So with old Mr. Speaker in charge, John Burko in charge, and funnily enough, we had a great night. But the only person who wouldn't come out for dinner afterwards was Mick Lynch, who I think sort of declared,
really?
yeah. And I mean, apparently, which is a shame. He was one of those guys that I thought would be, let's all go down the pub and have a drink. But I think he sort of objected to me viscerally, so he didn't come.
Well, I mean, I didn't get off to a very good start with Mick Lynch because I think I was in a pretty bad mood for some reason the first time I ever interviewed him. That they'd just called a strike, and so he came on Zoom, and my first question to him, so Mick Lynch, you're a national disgrace, aren't you?
And it was good stuff.
Anyway, we recovered, and I had him as a guest in Edinburgh, and yeah, Alex Salmond, what a great man. I mean, another character in politics that we miss a lot. Listen, I do have to go because I can't keep Jeremy Vine waiting. You know what he's like.
And give him my best. Ian, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you.
Mike.
Take it
Enjoyed
easy.
It. Cheers.
The book is Have I Said Too Much by Ian Dale, My Life in Politics and the Media. Great. It'll be a great read because he's a fascinating guy, Ian, and he has, a bit like myself, been around the block a few times. So that was great fun, wasn't it? What are we doing now? Because I've been completely thrown.
Look at the behind you.
Oh, we've got behind me. We've got Anne Widdecombe on the wall. Isn't that great? What a fantastic... Pooch has managed to get us a nice little framed photograph, and that's a lovely picture, isn't it? I do like that. I do like the fact that she's right behind me. So should we play our tribute? This has been lovingly put together by Charlotte. It's a beautiful thing. Let's have a look at it.
Now, only two sorts of people oppose free speech, and they are at opposite ends of the scale. Snowflakes and totalitarians. I am offended, upset, insulted at least 30 times a day. Tough. It is not necessary to flash your knickers to do a decent ballroom dance. Free speech is for all, not for the privileged few. Nobody has the right to live their lives being protected from offence or from insult or from hurt feelings. And if you really can't take it, become a hermit.
Widdy Weekly, what a good name, I have to say. We're delighted to say that Anne Widdecombe is going to join us every single Monday. She's going to share our thoughts with her own Substack members, and we are going to have a sort of, what can only be described as a collaboration. Anne, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Let's talk to Anne Widdecombe, who of course is a woman who knows everything about straight answers to straight questions. Anne, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Time to say a very good morning and a very happy Monday, the 13th of April, to Anne Widdecombe. Anne, very good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning to you.
You can call it Widdy Weekly. It's Anne Widdecombe, the voice of common sense, on the true home of common sense. Anne, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too, Mike.
Well, Anne Widdecombe, just the person we need to speak to on such an auspicious day. This from Lance has just come in. Can you get Anne to tell us about her Morris Minor convertible? I'm sure she'd love to. Do you have a Morris Minor convertible?
No, what he is thinking of is, when I was young, my very first car was a Morris Minor. Which I then kept for about 13 years, and I sold it for 6 times as much as I paid for it. Here's my owl, yes?
We have a preponderance of herons here in the studio, so obviously the bird theme has reached your West Country home. What's the owl signifying?
I just like owls. I've got an owl clock in my kitchen, and I've got owls on my cushions. I just like owls. The one who nags me most is my cat. But,
yes, I mean, well, you become a prisoner of your cat, don't you, if you're not careful?
Well, certainly he's the boss in this household, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Excellent. What's his name?
Aloysius.
Aloysius, what a great name for a cat. Well done. Well, Anne, as ever, great to see you.
You know, we had this business recently of last night's wonderful game. And the
Did
police...
you stay up?
No, certainly not. I don't like it. I love hearing everybody else's enthusiasm, but not Yeah. A couple of decades ago, my garden shed was burgled and they stole a strimmer. You know, I mean, it was not the end of the world. The police came and looked at it. They didn't actually do anything. They said, well, we think there's been another burglary, and they didn't, you know, look for fingerprints to see if they could match that to the other burglary. But what did they offer me? They offered me counselling for the loss of a strimmer. They offered me counselling. And when I roared with laughter, sarcastic laughter, they said, well, sorry, but we have to do this.
Pretty much sums it all up for you, really, doesn't it? Anne, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Remember Magna Carta, remember innocent until proved guilty, and let the law take its course.
Let us say a very happy bank holiday. Oh, look at this, bank holiday Monday to Anne Widdecombe. Look at you. Morning.
Well, I was told, Mike, that you were going to be in a Hawaiian shirt. I didn't believe it. I switched on and you were. So I thought, well, I must get into the spirit of this.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. Great hat, by the way, and fantastic sunglasses. But
I noticed the other day I made a journey on, it was a mixture of Great Western Railway and cross country. And everything went to time and I got all the connections. And I actually thought this was a wonderful thing instead of taking it for granted.
I know.
I was actually telling everybody, oh, it worked.
Yes.
I mean, for heaven's sake, there was a time when we would have been scandalised if it didn't work.
Exactly.
Now, you know, it's like saying when you come back from holiday, oh, good, we haven't been burgled. You know, it's accepting the lowest possible standard.
Yeah. What's he trying? Is he trying to make us like him? Because it's not working.
He's trying to show that he's got a sense of humour. In fact, he's got very little sense of humour. He's got some, but he's got very, very little sense of humour. My big beef with Starmer, in case anybody forgets, is that when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, he was the one who began. I mean, you know, Alison Saunders then took it to the ends of the earth, but he was the one who began the whole business of, if somebody says they've been assaulted, you believe them. You know, you believe them. I think once people realise they're not just lovable tree huggers, they're actually very, very serious neo-communists, I think there'll be a completely different reaction. We have confused tolerating other people's beliefs with surrendering our own.
No.
So these sorts of interviews, and I really hope the sort of work that you're doing catches on, these sort of interviews are hugely useful.
What a sensible woman, so terribly sensible woman. Wow, what an amazing woman. You know, I watched that probably just as well I did actually watched it yesterday when Charlotte did it, because I think if I'd watched that for the first time today, that would have been, I would have been back to weeping like I was on Friday. I don't know quite how we go on from this, really. It's an awful situation. We still don't really know what happened. I'm going to continue to ask questions, and I've actually got a couple of really good comments on the Substack this morning from John, who says, "Morning, Mike. I believe we have a right to question and probe. We have got used to just being quiet and told what you're allowed to be told these days. This when the level of distrust in various parts of the government, the CPS, the police and the mainstream media is at an all-time high. Alison Pearson's Twitter says exactly the same question we are all thinking. Her words, the suspect drove nearly 300 miles to Anne's home with a wooden stick, but he wasn't politically motivated. What was the motive?" There's Danny saying, "What a truly great woman, a real loss to the world, and she will be missed." Roy says on the Substack, "Well said, Mike. I didn't know Anne, but I'm feeling desperately sad and awful about what happened to her. Can't comprehend how quickly the police said it wasn't political and nothing to see here. This feels very strange. I don't think we're being told the truth. I don't trust the police and I don't like how things are treated differently. However, this goes, we have lost a huge force of nature in Anne, so condolences to her family and friends." And some super chats, yes, thank you for that, Charlotte. Joe says this, "Thank you for being a place of comfort for our shock and grief. The Bish and your reaction was so real and in some ways comforting on Friday, so shocking and sad." It really was shocking on Friday. Catherine says, "The police farce has a terrible record for solving violent crime. This particular one, I just find it very unusual for an individual to travel so far away for nothing but a random attack." Well, I think we all find that very difficult. Great show as always, Mike. With regard to the poll, Anne deserves all four, says Aless. I think you're probably right. Thank you. Another one from Melissa there.
Alessandra.
Alessandra. Sorry, my fault. I can't read. Peace Planet, another super chat. Thank you very much indeed for those. Keep them coming. Catherine says, in regards to not talking about the sad murder of Anne, are those in power off their heads? No one has been charged technically. We still have a murderer wandering around. Shouldn't the public get as much information as possible? Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? I'm like Jacob Rees-Mogg. The police don't have carte blanche to tell us what to say and what not to say. They have a duty to perform. Paul says, Anne, a very good morning to you. I'm going to miss those words, Mike. R.I.P. Anne. God bless you. Absolutely. Maddie says, we all need an Auntie Anne in our life to put us straight, especially the younger generation who have been brainwashed against being British. You will be greatly missed. I think that's true. Every time I see an owl, I'll always remember Anne, says Seaside Babe. Yeah, that's a nice way to remember her. Charlotte, you put together a fantastic honour for Anne, says Simon. Absolutely, she did. It was terrific. And maybe we'll play it every day. You know, I wouldn't be against that, because to see somebody as vibrant and as attractive as Anne Widdecombe, and I mean that obviously in the sense of as a human being, just a very attractive personality, a very attractive, intelligent, brilliant woman, inspirational, all of the things that are great about being British, and also terribly British. She sort of stood for something that I fear we might be losing in this country, which is a sense of Britishness, a sense of pride, a sense of fun, you know, mockery. She was very funny. She spent a lot of time laughing. And as I said earlier in the show, normally speaking, she would have been here today, as she was last Monday. And on that clip of all of the various different appearances of hers, one of them was in the pink jacket from last Monday. Seaside Babe says, Anne would want us to keep fighting the good fight. She absolutely would. Let's talk to Marilyn Hawes.
Can you just quickly mention Anne's Substack?
Oh, sorry, yes.
What it meant to her.
Anne's Substack, which we sort of collaborated on. In fact, if you go onto Anne's Substack, I think the last thing on it was her appearance on the show last Monday, because I guess she hasn't got around to updating it by Wednesday. And so go and have a look at all of the stuff that's on there, because she would probably want you to do that. And it would be a fantastic way to remember her as well. Marilyn Hawes is here, I think. Marilyn, very good morning to you.
Oh, morning.
Oh, crikey, here we go.
It wouldn't be me,
it wouldn't be right if you were sitting there serenely in one position, would it? I mean, we couldn't have that.
You know, I how I'm supposed to come up with anything, having just seen that compilation. That
I know. It's hard, isn't it? It's really tough, especially when you see somebody, and you know, I mean, I've been thinking about this ever since Friday morning. You know, it's hard to get it out of your mind, isn't it? It's sort of everything else seems to be very insignificant, really, in a comparison. But you know, she wouldn't want that. She'd be standing over you, going, "Come on, Marilyn, don't be so bloody stupid. Just talk about what you would normally talk about."
I was just going to say to you, if she came back now, or she's up there on her cloud, she'd be going, you know, oh, for goodness sake, I'm in a better place than any of you now. You know, I'm just looking down, sending down bolts of lightning. Get on with it.
Yes.
You knew where you stood with her. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to have met her. I've always liked her. I like the straightforward... I've got to get my laptop sorted one day, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
I like the straightforward... attitude that she had. She was very good, wasn't she, at stripping down an issue, a situation, and getting right down to the core roots of. You listen to her vocabulary, you listen to how she analyses and assesses. She keeps it very simple and yet in plain speech, and carves it right down. And oh yeah, that's it. That's what that really means. That's right. Yeah. And I you know, we've definitely, the world has lost a wonderful soul. And I think she was attractive in every way, actually. I think for an elderly lady, she always looked smart. She was always dignified.
Yeah.
You know, and there are not enough adjectives, to be honest, to describe her. And she was very humble, didn't take herself seriously. None of us should. None of us should, you know. And she didn't. She didn't. And you can't. I find it difficult to believe that this wasn't political. I mean, true, because Saturday night, within 24, with all the Reform MPs are now on 24-hour police protection.
Yeah.
But political. I mean, why?
Well, that's actually, I mean, you know what's interesting about that, though, because Zia Yusuf made this clear the other day when the Mail on Sunday put that as their page one story, which the way they wrote it made people think that it was police protection and it was basically that the Parliament had ordered it. But no, this has been Reform's own decision, and it's Reform as an organisation who are paying for the extra protection because the state isn't.
Okay.
And it's, everybody's made the same mistake because that's the way the story was written to make you think that.
That's absolutely right. It was written like that, but you know, do you know what has really on top of everything else has upset me? People say things that can't be unsaid.
Yeah.
I don't care how sorry Adam Bolton is. He's a complete prig.
Yeah.
I have described that. And there's another hideous female that's now being looked at in. She's a member of staff, I think, at University in Aberdeen. A
Yes.
girl, woman called Heather Hurd.
Somebody,
What
yes.
an obnoxious.
She's actually a bloke, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's she's not a she. It's a bloke. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. You know.
It's just dreadful. And if that isn't hate speech, what is? That she hopes she had a painful death, chained to bed and what? Disgusting.
Hey, stop calling him she. Hey.
I'm another one.
There's an earlier clip as well of her of him with another dodgy looking tranny.
No, I don't.
And I'm afraid laughing about the death of Charlie Kirk.
I know. I've seen that.
Right? And also, guess what? Heather, is also a former Labour candidate for office.
Yeah. Well, I call them the nonce party, and how proud are they? They got more gays and everything than anybody else. I mean, it's just awful. But you know what really, 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 I think is disgusting is the lack. Some people are awful by their absence, if you know what I mean. The King and the royals have said nothing. I haven't seen anything, condolences or anything, and dedicated her life to politics. Whether you are for a better UK, whether you agree with her or not, is nothing to do with it. She was a committed, dedicated person in politics. And the King, Queen, William, all of them, none of them have said, we send our condolences to Anne's family and friends. How hard is that? But of course, if this was a mosque being blown up, the Muslim king would be all over it. I mean,
He might well be. I haven't checked that, to be honest, but I will do to see whether he said anything about it. But yeah, I mean, again, you've got this ridiculous kind of establishment in the country now who would rather have a go at Nigel Farage for going and making a very heartfelt visit to her home, putting some flowers down, Reform colleagues of hers, because don't forget, they were all in the Brexit party together. They've all been together for a long time. It's not as if, and they get accused of jumping on some kind of bandwagon. Whereas when Jeremy Corbyn and David Cameron went out and put flowers down for Joe Cox, they didn't get accused of that.
No. I think the police have got a problem, because I was listening to the news this morning and I think they're running out of time. They only have 36 hours, don't they? And I have a friend who's very, very high up in Europol. I do know people in high places.
I'm sure you do.
I was talking to him down the pub, like you do, and I said to him, why do they straight away, that poor person that they first arrested, why don't they say, and shouldn't they say, you would know because you're Europol, shouldn't they say, we are questioning a person of interest, not we've arrested somebody on the charge of murder, blah, blah, blah. I mean, excuse me, you haven't even interviewed him yet. And then this other geezer now that they've only got a few more hours that they can still question the person. If they are so, and we're not looking for anybody else, well, how do you know somebody else isn't involved? It's bizarre. There's something, it just doesn't pin together. But they've got a real problem if they can't stick this on this guy within the next few hours or get an extension of a day or so. They're going to have to release him. And then what?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, they were full of the joys of spring when they arrested the 26-year-old guy in Newton Abbot, only to discover that he had nothing to do with it.
Well, I hope he sues them.
And then you wonder why people haven't really got faith in the police. And you go, well, there is that. But how about this, right? I can give you an update on the royal family and what they've been saying, because they have offered their condolences.
Oh, they have, that's all right.
Hang on. No, wait a minute. You haven't let me finish. You don't want to jump the gun here because the royal family have issued a message of condolence from the King and Queen following the passing of His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, Father Emir of the State of Qatar. I'm not joking. It's at the top of his Twitter. Nothing on Anne Widdecombe. Nothing on Anne Widdecombe. I'm sorry.
Anymore. The Muslim king, he's got to abdicate. I'm going back on that old conversation that he took.
What on earth is going on?
And he's negated all of them. He has to go. The man is a complete plonk. He really is. Oh, you're plank, rather. I mean,
Plonk, whatever.
I mean, I just find the whole thing absolutely extraordinary. And I shouldn't let my imagination run away with me, but I can't help thinking, my goodness, was she left lingering and in pain, or did he? I'm never going to know. You're never going to know, are you? But I mean, that poor woman. I mean, it's just awful. You can't. I saw an interview. I don't know if you've seen it, but it is such a lovely interview with Colm Flynn. About 10 months ago, and he was interviewing her about stuff, politics and all of that, and about her as a person, right, and mortality. He was talking about mortality, and she jokingly said, well, I never thought about it, she said, in my 60s, and then I got to 75, and, I think it's fair to say when you get to that age, you start forgetting names of people you've known in your life. Creaky things start, coming in. So he then asked her, so are you frightened of your mortality? No. Because I'm going to go to heaven and see my mum and dad and brother and maybe my cats, but I don't. That doesn't make theological sense, does it? Absolutely not. Am I frightened? No, because she lived her life according to her faith and never, ever went away from it. And there's a lot to be said there. I want her legacy. I want people in this country. Like, I listen a lot now to Bishop Kai. Actually, I've got his number and everything. And
he's amazing, isn't he?
That man, I heard his eulogy on Friday. It was so moving. I was crying. I mean, it's just amazing. He's amazing, as is Chris Wickland. His protege, if you like. But I wanted to put out, and I thought I shouldn't be disrespectful because I thought Anne was never disrespectful. So no, learn from your better people. But how many people stand up in a pulpit every Sunday and they are as dry as dust, and they are so holy Joes, and Kai and Chris Wickland are the real deal. They have passion in them. They have that total belief in what they're saying and what they believe in their heart. There is no doubt about what they're saying and how they believe. And we haven't got that.
Well, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being a Catholic who doesn't believe in abortion or who doesn't believe in gay marriage. That's perfectly acceptable, unless of course you're the Pope. In which case, the Pope has gone the other way on that because he's not too sure what's going on.
That thinks Muslims and Christians can live together. No, they can't, any more than blackbirds, have sex with herons.
That's a horrible thought. That I think we should keep the herons out of it. To be honest,
That's absolutely.
No, I know. It is dreadful. It is absolutely dreadful. But listen, as ever, very inspiring to hear from you, Marilyn. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. I feel quite sort of humbled and privileged to be given the time to actually talk about her because I mean, the world is a worse place without her. And
it is.
It really is. I can't say that enough. I can't say that. She knew who she was and what she was, and a lot of people don't know that. They spend their life trying to find who they are, but she knew who she was, and I'm going to say because she had a faith. We are made up of mind, body, and spirit. And if your spirit inside you dries up, then you're dry and you're dead and you're not creative. And these things, this triangle of the three things within is so important. Yeah. And Ian, I'm glad I didn't ever. I used to go on his show a lot. I was getting hold of it. I did not offend him. Which is great. I offend most people.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know why. I don't find you offensive in any way whatsoever. How can you be offensive?
I just say what I think, and I don't BS people. If I believe something, I've thought about it, I've considered it, I've looked in my brain, I've researched it, I make my own decision. I think, no, this is what I now think, this is what I now believe, and I'm happy to have a debate. And Anne would have a debate, but she knew you know, she knew what her belief was and strong in that. And I'm the same. I have a very strong this sort of way of parenting. I would love to, you know, better way of parenting, maybe old or discipline and stuff like that. You know, I mean, we've lost so much what our boundaries. You know, that you got to. Boundaries are good. Children need boundaries. We all need boundaries. We all need to look at ourselves and say, am I self-controlled? Well, I'm not after I've had a few drinks. I mean, that's...
Well, we've seen that. Anyway, listen, we've got to run because I've got Greg Swenson in the studio. We haven't seen him for a while. We've got lots to talk to him about. Greg, very good morning to you. But listen, Marilyn, have a good day. Have a good week. We'll do our best to try and get to the bottom of whatever the hell has happened here.
Because I'm watching this with, you know,
Yeah.
with magnifying glass.
I know, absolutely right. Well, keep your eyes on it because we'll be hopefully revealing some things as the week goes on. Greg, good to see you. Welcome.
Great to be here, Mike.
Greg from Republicans Overseas, of course. Just before we play, just before we talk to Greg, though, Charlotte, do you think we could just play, because I want to play it to people, Dale Vince.
Oh, yes.
Who's nothing to do with Greg, nothing to do with America, actually, but he is one of the most ridiculous people I think we've ever seen. So I just wanted to show you him storming out of an interview with Camilla Tominey from The Telegraph just the other day. Have a look.
Oh, it won't play.
It's not going to play?
I'll find it, but we'll come back to it.
All right, we'll come back to it. We'll play it in a minute. Greg, how are you? Good to see you. Obviously, terrible. I don't know if you knew Anne Widdecombe at all, but I mean, all those of us who did, in any way, shape, or form, and I'm not going to pretend I was a close friend of hers, but we used to have her on the show every Monday. I've known her for years.
Yeah.
She was a very, redoubtable individual, great character. The thing that I suppose worries a lot of us is that, is this going to be the beginning of some kind of, I wouldn't say obviously development, but the police seem very sure that it's not politically motivated. I'm not quite sure how they can say that.
Yeah.
Seems a bit kind of a stretch for most of us.
What is it, 3 MPs in the last 7 or 8 years?
Right. And I mean, you've seen this obviously in the States with and I was going to bring up Lindsey Graham's name because obviously there are stories going around. I don't know what you think of them, but the FBI certainly have been called in to look into the sudden death of Lindsey Graham, a senator who, at the age of 71, I mean, not much older than you and I, really, which is slightly troubling. But
I mean, it could have just been a random heart attack, that's what they're saying so far. But, I think it would be good to put anything, put the questions to rest.
Right.
Do an autopsy, make sure that there was no funny
Yeah,
funny business,
I mean, I was listening to an interview this morning from somebody from The Hill magazine over in Washington, D.C., who said there is some history of heart disease in his family. There has been an autopsy of some kind performed in which it looked as though he had a heart attack. But, there are lots of ways you could get a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not to say that
you can induce it. And,
right.
And, there were no shortage of enemies of him.
Right.
Because,
he was a very big Trump fan, wasn't he? Close to Trump.
Big supporter of President Trump, played golf with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, often, visited his country clubs. And, but he was also a hawk. He was very pro-Israel. He was very, very much a critic of Putin and his...
And he'd just been to Ukraine, apparently, right?
Yeah, he'd just come back from Kyiv. He was in Kyiv on Friday, and then updated the president on Saturday. And probably the last person he talked to was President Trump.
Right.
And what he's advocating, and I think we'll kind of rush it through this week, I hope so anyway, is additional sanctions on Russia and on Putin.
Right.
Especially so they'll basically sanction any country that buys oil or gas from Russia.
Yeah, because that's the sort of backdoor that they're using, isn't it, to continually make a bucket load of money, effectively.
That's right.
Some of it was making its way to the UK, I believe.
Absolutely, and the EU was buying $19-20 billion worth of oil in 2025. It's not it's not like it's just 2022 or pre-22.
Right.
So I mean, essentially the West is funding the war against Ukraine.
Yeah. Which is kind of insane, isn't it? Particularly when you hear what the people, particularly in Europe, are saying. The NATO summit that took place in Ankara, Donald Trump went there, was relatively calm, wasn't he, in his dealings with Keir Starmer? He didn't flame him or anything, which of course is always what he does, isn't it? When you most expect him to do something, he doesn't do it.
Right.
And he just kind of backs off a little bit.
Keeps you on your toes.
But I mean, there was nothing good that came out of it from what I could see for the UK or indeed for Western Europe, other than a continuing kind of schism. in NATO.
I think there is some of that, and I think that this has been probably developing for a long time. It wasn't just President Trump. Obama had similar criticisms. He just delivered them in perhaps a more diplomatic way.
Right.
But, Ronald Reagan was talking about it 40 years ago. I'm very critical of the Germans for buying and becoming dependent on Russian oil and gas.
Right.
And so, I think he's got, as usual, the president has a funny way of delivering it. He's unfiltered, but he's right.
Yeah.
And so, what I think the European allies acted, really horribly by not allowing the U.S. to use the air bases that we pay for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was amazed actually how calmly he took that.
Yeah.
Because he was pretty relaxed about it in a way. I mean, he came back later and said, well, it's a bit late now that you're offering your help.
Yeah.
He saved
actually,
that for you should have given it at the time,
Yeah.
But just going back to Lindsey Graham for a minute, I mean, the word is that the FBI would always get involved in the death of any high-ranking politician, regardless of what the methodology would be.
Yeah.
But it's quite an unusual scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, look, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah.
But that's for sure, and that's why I think they will do a more deliberate autopsy and make sure there was no funny business. But he's also 71, had a history of heart disease or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's too early to tell. I think we want to see some more deliberate proof. And but there's no shortage of enemies of him. That's and anybody who supports President Trump is going to have a target on them.
Sure.
Because the progressive left is they're just
this
they've
is
lost
I think
their minds.
what Reform were worried about in this country. We had Richard Tice on this morning, and certainly over the weekend. Once again, Reform get criticised in a way that others don't.
Yeah.
But you'll know from the anti-Trumpists that they're kind of relentless. These people, because obviously when Joe Cox was killed. Naturally, Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party and then David Cameron, I guess would he be Prime Minister? I suppose he would. They went and laid flowers at the scene of the crime, and they weren't accused of, in some way milking it.
And it's not like they were exploiting this event of someone about someone who they don't know. I mean, she was a spokesperson for Reform.
But also for a lot of them, people forget that Anne Widdecombe was also a Brexit Party MEP.
Yeah, so they've been together for years. Yeah.
They all worked together in Brussels.
Yeah.
And as a group in Brussels, I happen to know, because I know so many of them from the time, people like Alex Phillips and Lindsay Lucy and all those guys. I mean, they all worked very closely together because they were sort of like the enemy within, and they were, people would sort of hiss at them as they walked down corridors, because they wanted to just basically do away with the European Union.
Right.
So they were working very closely together.
Yeah. I'd met her once, but I wish I'd gotten to know her better. I just haven't had the occasion.
She was a magnificent woman. She was just one of those people that you would go, isn't it just amazing that she can say the things that she says with such, surety, and she was just a brilliant orator and just a great Briton, really. The like of which we'll probably never see again. Let's go back to the Gulf, though, because I'm looking at a piece on the Telegraph, breaking news. US attacks Iran with naval drones for the first time. These are quite terrifying things, aren't they? Because you think of a drone as I think of it as like a sort of little flying saucer
not these
about the size
drones.
of a Frisbee.
Yeah.
But these things, and I've seen some of them on the roof of buildings in the US, they're literally sort of mini warplanes, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're attack drones, and they are little mini warplanes. I think Tom Tugendhat had brought one back from Ukraine that the Russians had and that they'd captured from the Russians, but made by the Iranians.
Yeah.
And that gave us, the advantage of at least, being able to analyze these things. And they've actually started producing.
Well, apparently they're making
ones.
them so quickly now in Iran that they're making them as quickly as they can be shot down. If you like.
Yeah. And my nephew's a fighter pilot on the Abraham Lincoln, and he shot down a couple of Shahed drones.
Right.
It's bad math because a $300,000 missile to shoot down a $10,000 drone.
Yeah.
But they're getting better at it, right? So at the beginning of the conflict, he did fly his F-18 and shoot down a Shahed drone. Right. But since then, they've just used their own drones to take them down.
And presumably, forgive me if you're sounding very ignorant about this, but I do. Because I am. I mean, do they fire these drones en masse? Is it like one of those scenes from Independence Day where they all come out of the mothership?
I think both. I think mostly they're probably fired individually because I think it's easier to spot them when they're flying en masse. But Yeah, I mean, it's something that the technology is getting better, and we're getting much better at it. We, the Americans, or the Navy.
Yeah.
But it's an issue, and so. But look, this is not a fair fight, right? I mean, they're staying as a nuisance, right?
Yeah.
They're firing these one-off missiles and one-off drones. Their capabilities have been greatly reduced.
Yeah.
And we fired on 140 targets overnight.
Right.
And they fired like 50 missiles, none of which got through.
Yeah.
Now, they did hit a commercial tanker yesterday.
Right.
But, so the nuisance factor is still there, but, we have the ability to blockade Iran. We have the ability to keep picking off their radar systems and any sort of defensive capabilities that they have, or offensive capabilities. And we can clear the strait. We'd rather not have to clear the strait, but we will, and we're escorting ships right now. So not at the same volume that we had before.
So it's open again?
Yeah.
It's again hard to keep up, isn't it? Because Iranians will close it from time to time. I think last week I heard a story where they were saying that any ships passing should pass on the Iranian side and not the Oman side.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
And they can't enforce their own. So that's a lot of bluster coming from the regime. But there's no doubt that the traffic is probably lower than we'd like it to be, because we have to escort these ships, and I would imagine a lot of commercial ships are hesitant to even bother going through the strait. But we are moving, even before the ceasefire, we were moving about a dozen a night through the strait. And the Iranians couldn't do anything about it because they don't have any radar. So if they can't see them visibly, then they can't do anything.
So what's being said back home, in your case, in DC, but also around America, about the situation? Because, of course, a lot of people, I mean, I talk to people in Israel quite a lot who are a bit disappointed that, Trump didn't kind of go in and finish the job.
Yeah.
And you can see why they would say that.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham was the leader of that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very critical of the ceasefire and the memorandum of understanding, because he knew that they wouldn't comply with it, and he was right. He's been proven right.
Yeah.
And so, there's the anti-war right wing, the sort of the wing of the MAGA movement that just doesn't want any foreign interventions.
Right.
But then you have the traditional hawks like Lindsey Graham, who very much wanted to finish the job.
Right.
And
are
the
the people who are the MAGA movement who don't want it, is that based on kind of an ideology, or is it just based on money?
More ideology, but money has something to do with it. But it's more body bags that they don't like, And I think that's the effect of Iraq and Afghanistan, where we lost so many people, and so did the Brits, and they just don't want to see that again.
America lost an awful lot more, though, didn't it? I think people don't appreciate that.
Yeah.
That, yes, Britain obviously, was suffered massively in terms of sort of per capita members of the military, but the numbers were huge for America.
And I think that's why there's virtually no appetite for boots on the ground or any sort of formal regime change. But I think that regime change is becoming more and more likely, because the negotiating as well as the activity is completely uncoordinated, right? You've got the mullahs saying one thing, or the civilian government saying one thing and negotiating, and then the IRGC is just firing missiles and trying to disrupt it.
And nobody seems to know who's in charge, do they?
Because nobody knows.
They don't even know if the son of the Ayatollah is even alive.
Nobody's seen him, Right. And so I think it means, we have all the cards. There's very little appetite for a long war, that's for sure. And, for sure the president felt the pressure of gas prices or petrol prices, felt the pressure of the midterms around the corner, but he's always going to do the right thing. He'll negotiate first. Of course, he wants a negotiated settlement, but he's not going to get it, right? So, he has to go back to kinetic activity because there's no choice.
And the oil price seems to have kind of leveled off a bit. I mean,
it's still hovering at 70.
Petrol in my car the other day. It was like under 150 a litre for the first time that I can remember for ages.
I mean, and even with the conflict sort of rearing its ugly head again, it hasn't gone up that much. It was down in the mid-60s, now it's at 70. So we're sort of still hovering around pre-conflict levels, a few dollars a barrel away. And the other challenge is, granted, the movement in gas prices in the U.S. is more significant than petrol prices here, because you have so much more tax. And so the actual input from refined product is much greater in America than it is in Europe.
So it goes up quicker in other words.
Right, because it's a more meaningful, it's a greater percentage of the total price. Except in California, because they're lunatics. And so it's, it's $6 a gallon in California, it's $3 a gallon in Texas. It's typical. But I think that it's also versus the oil shocks in the 70s. It's so much less of a meaningful number now than it was then. In other words, people don't spend as much of their paycheck on gas because we've kept it. It's probably at or lower than it was inflation adjusted than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, right.
So it's not as great a percentage of your paycheck, and that's why I don't think it's moving the needle as much as I'm not saying it won't, right? And if gas is at $4 a gallon, which is like
it's still very cheap.
It's still less than half of what you pay in the UK. But if it's $4, that just means more losses at the midterms, and so it is very correlated.
And what is the current prediction of the losses?
It's only about 7 or 8 seats, which means we'll lose the House because we potentially pick up 15 because of the end of the racial gerrymandering.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court said you can't gerrymander by race, which is common sense.
You would think.
Yeah. And it's like the only way to stop racism is to stop being racist. And that law was very racist. And so that will account for maybe 15 Republican seats. So we would have lost 25, but now we only lose 7 to 10.
Right.
And so there's always a chance that we can win. I think the betting markets have it at 25%. But gas would have to be back under 3, and thanks to the massive oil and gas production in the U.S. So we can thank the president for that. And if real wages start to really kick in, which I think they will, it's just a matter of time, whether it's before or after the midterm.
But America's economy is still doing an awful lot better than ours.
Absolutely.
Right? And the one thing that we keep hearing, I mean, Rachel Reeves on at the weekend talking about how the economy was in better shape. And I'm sort of sitting there going, sorry, we've created a load more jobs. What? We've got income levels are up. Yeah, because you keep giving public sector workers pay rises and then punishing the rest of us.
Totally
most of us are much worse off now than we ever were. And you left the country.
Yeah,
for heaven's sake.
All the taxpayers are leaving.
Yeah,
I mean it's crazy, and I think there's that perverse incentive, but taxpayers and producers will continue to leave as long as they keep raising taxes.
Yeah.
It's just a simple formula.
And now we've got Burnham coming in promising to raise taxes.
Of course he will. And tax receipts have gone down since all these expats left. And so the U.S. economy is kicking because we had the big beautiful bill a little over a year ago, and that was reducing taxes, reducing regulation, which was huge, plus the liberation of the energy sector. That was so. It was the Biden administration was so hostile. So gas prices were higher under Biden in 2022.
Right.
So we're not even at Biden levels. Right. And that wasn't because of an armed conflict or a supply shock.
Taxes.
It was taxes and regulation.
Yeah.
He wouldn't allow any new oil and gas leases. He was very hostile to the sector. So prices went up, and that's why before his midterm in 2022, he started releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which had never been done outside of Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait. Right? During real energy shocks or wars, that's when you tap into the reserve. But it had only been tapped 3 or 4 times in 50 years.
Yeah, amazing.
So it was pretty shameless, and it was all self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So now we have this this really liberated economy. Real wages went up until February or March when we had the short-term oil shock, but generally speaking, people are feeling wealthier, and then the tax refunds were much higher.
Yeah.
So like the higher gas prices in March, amounted to on average to 15% of the tax return, the additional tax return that people got.
Wow.
So they're not feeling it. You see it on the news, and it gets hyped up quite a bit, but it's not affecting. Retail sales are up. People are spending. Things are good.
Right. I remember when we had a country like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to it.
It can come back.
Can we get it back, please?
It was only 4 years ago. We were in a similar situation.
I know.
9% inflation. And
incredible.
So,
Greg, good to see you.
Great to be here,
Thanks
Mike.
for having
Good to see you
Thanks
again.
for popping in. You're in the country for a while?
For the week. CPAC. Speaking at CPAC on
Oh,
Saturday.
CPAC. Yeah, I'm going to be there too.
Yeah, good.
So
good.
we'll see you down there.
Great.
We'll be covering that actually. Big event coming up this week from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I'm on a panel with an Australian senator, I think, and Jack Posobiec's on it.
Good. Yeah, I'm on with Niall Gardner on Saturday.
Dan Wootton as well. So we'll bring you all of that. Also, a couple of super chats before we go.
Yeah, there's just one.
one.
Don't know if we've got time for a Pooch's Pooch, have we?
No, do a double one tomorrow.
Do a double tomorrow. That's from Simon Rage. Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it. Yeah, well, hold on. We'll do Dale Vince at some point as well. We'll just stick it in the Plank of the Week scenario, if nothing else. Again, thank you so much to all of you for watching. We had incredible numbers today watching because so many of you are looking for answers, looking for reasons to explain what we've seen over the past few days and the tragic death, murder of Anne Widdecombe, one of our greatest Britons, I think you'd have to say. And we'll continue to keep you informed and updated with the news as it happens. Kelvin McKenzie doing a show from 10, coming up in about half an hour's time. I'll be joining him for a little chit-chat, I'm sure. And then Paul Fox in the chair for Mark Littlewood.
Paul Cox. Cox, not Fox.
Sorry, Paul Cox, yeah. What did I say, Paul Fox? Paul Cox. Who's Paul Fox? He's not there, but Paul Cox is there. And he's going to do the midday show. Mark Littlewood's on a train in hiding from Scottish fans. Wearing an Argentina shirt to disguise himself, but there we are. Last comment. Thanks for an amazing show. I know it must have been a tough one for you. Beautiful tribute to lovely Anne. You look very smart, Mike. Thank you. Well, I thought I should wear a black tie, you know. Last time I wore this was when Queen Elizabeth II died. And I think Anne Widdecombe deserves at least equal treatment from that. Because she was one of our queens, I would have to say. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. Look out for all the clips that go out on YouTube. And if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the channel and please like it as well, because we're getting up to now 170,000. We'd like to push it to 200,000. The more we get, obviously, the better it does. So please, thank you very much indeed for everything. Seaside Babe, Charlotte, thank you for your lovely tribute to Anne. Great show. Love you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Greg, nice to see you. Kelvin McKenzie coming next.